Chapter 2844, 2844 Mending the 14th Seal. Chapter 2844, 2844 Mending the 14th Seal. 2844 Mending the 14th Seal. Since there was no one else to fight, Ling Han could only leave helplessly. Rong Yang expressed much gratitude towards him for resolving a great problem like Mending. From now onwards, the grudge between Rong clan and Ling Han and Ling City was considered settled. Ling Han knew that this was because his potential was too terrifying, so the Rong clan was willing to give him some face. Of course, if it were not for the fact that he had the Lin clan backing him up, they would definitely have just directly crushed him into the dust. Because they could not kill him now, and were also wary of his future strength, it would be better to settle things peacefully and turn an enemy into a friend. Ling Han was fine with this. In any case, the main culprits, Zhu Heavenly Venerate and Rong Xingquan, had already been killed, so if they wanted to become friends instead of enemies with him, then so be it. When there are other fights in the future, remember to invite me, Ling Han said laughingly. Rong Yang's expression involuntarily darkened. If he really brought Ling Han to more fights in the future, he would definitely be cursed out by the others, just like how Mending had been. Just how many people would he bring to ruin? Of course, Rong Yang said half-heartedly, but he had already made his decision. He definitely could not take Ling Han to participate in this kind of event in future. Ling Han did not give up. I might be busy sometimes, so my wife could go as well. Rong Yang's expression was even darker. It was not that he had never fought the Empress before. Though she was a second tier, she was strong enough to match a third tier. She, too, was a super freak. Rong Yang sent off Ling Han like he was sending off a bringer of misfortune. It would be best for him not to have too much contact with this kind of cunning guy. Just like this, Ling Han returned to Ling City. On the surface, he was all smiles and cheery. He had obtained 20 heavenly venerable seals on this trip, which could be considered to be great profit. However, there was a hidden worry lying at the depths of his heart. Just what was going on with his body? He did not tell anyone about this matter. He began seclusion, digesting those 20 heavenly venerable seals, but after refining them, he discovered that 3 of these seals were duplicates. Thus, he immediately severed them again and transmitted them to the Empress. In this manner, the number of heavenly venerable seals he now possessed was as many as 35, but the newly obtained seals were all 9th grade seals. Bunch of cheapskates. However, after piecing them together, those 5 combination seals had actually increased to 9. If they were channeled simultaneously, the boost to his power would reach as much as 26 times, and this was considered 7th grade. Not bad at all. Ling Han nodded. 9th grade seals would have the advantage of 9th grade seals and that was that everyone did not value them too much. They were also the most common ones, and it was possible that they would become the first combination seals that he would successfully piece back together. Just think about it. 9 seals would boost his battle prowess by 26 times. Then when 110 of them were all collected, just how many times would they boost his battle prowess? 1,000? 10,000? Ling Han couldn't help but feel expectant, but it was not clear just how long it would take before this day came. No one was an idiot. If he battled and won repeatedly, who would still come to fight him? It is no wonder that so many have started to walk the path of robbery and murder. There is no need for rules, and one would be able to take possession of the seals that others have earnestly comprehended through much difficulty for themselves. It is indeed the fastest way to improve oneself. At present, I can refine other heavenly venerates and snatch all of their cultivation level and seals. For me, this is a massive temptation, and even I can't help but be tempted to take this shortcut. However, would this kind of forceful robbery of others' cultivation level really help me to climb to the pinnacle? Ling Han thought that this was too uncertain. What one robbed was ultimately not what they had obtained through their own cultivation. Perhaps, for a short while, there would be a visible soaring of cultivation level and strength, but after a long period of time, the hidden problem of having unstable foundations would be exposed. It would be better to take it one step at a time. Ling Han spent tens of thousands of years and finally mastered all his newly gained heavenly venerable seals completely, turning them into his own, and only then did he come out of seclusion. In the outside world, the Rong clan had already joined an alliance with the Ling clan. In the case of the Ying clan, it had yet to be confirmed because the Ying clan's appetite was too big. They actually wanted the princess of the Lin clan to marry into the Ying clan. Even Lin Xiaoyang could not decide this matter. Lin Yulian was Lin Luo's favorite daughter, and if she herself was not willing, who would dare to force her? When the news spread out, everyone was saying that the Ying clan was shameless. Lin Yulian was the strongest prodigy of eternity, and it was only a matter of time before she advanced to the 7th tier, and she might even get as far as 7th tier in the future. Yu, a 6th tier force, actually dared to have designs on a supreme elite that would be a 7th tier in the future. Weren't they shameless? Hence, the alliance with the Ying clan continued to be delayed. On the other side, the matter of Lin Piaoxue marrying Rong Yang was also proven to be just a rumor. Who was Lin Xiaoyang? He was the son of a 7th tier, and he himself was also a 6th tier. Would he be so short-sighted and use his own daughter to trade for an alliance? Because this alliance was centered around the Lin clan, and added with the fact that Lin Luo was also a 7th tier, this alliance was called the Lin Alliance. To be honest, Ling Han and the others were also members of this Lin Alliance, but their strength appeared quite negligible. Heavenly Venerates were still dying, but because the majority of Heavenly Venerates had now gathered together in alliances, the number of deaths had also greatly decreased. It was very rare for battles to start between alliances should both of them fight so hard that they were both damaged severely. It was possible that a third party could swoop in and take advantage of their weakness to eliminate them. This would be paving the way for someone else for nothing. In this manner, the world was showing signs of becoming peaceful. The world had always been like this, Chaz returning to peace, and peace overturned by chaos. Ling Han began another long period of seclusion. In any case, he was idle at the moment. As he cultivated, he attempted to mend the 14th seal. In its incomplete state, it already had a boost of 29 times, so it was extremely likely that it would be a high-level seal of the 6th grade or even 5th grade once it was mended. He continued to communicate with the heaven and earth, extracting void particle energy to mend the 14th seal. The progress was extremely slow, but there was indeed some progress. Heavenly Venerable seals were superior to regulations. They were means that a Heavenly Venerate used to communicate with the fundamental power of the Genesis world in the first place, so it was natural that they could be mended with the 6 great fundamental powers. Ling Han couldn't help but feel rueful. If he attained the 7th tier, he would be able to extract the 6 elements at the same time with just a wave of his hand. So the efficiency of mending a Heavenly Venerable seal would definitely increase a great many times over. 700 million years passed, and the repair of this seal was halfway done. It could provide a boost up to 32 times. Another 2 billion years later, the repair had reached 3/4 of completion, providing a boost of 39 times. Merely this was already equal to the 4 direction seals, and this was just a single seal. This was astonishing. Ling Han couldn't help but feel expectant. If he advanced to the 3rd tier, would an even more powerful seal appear automatically before him? Another 4 billion years later, the 14th seal was finally fully mended, providing a boost that leapt straight to 47 times. This was a 5th grade seal. If Ling Han could obtain even more 5th grade seals, what kind of astonishing effects would combining them bring? He really wanted to fight higher-level Heavenly Venerates. Ling Han felt rueful. However, his present battle prowess could just barely match peak stage 4th tier. Should he encounter a 5th tier, he would definitely be done for. So it would be best that he did not go and deliver gifts. He came out of seclusion and discovered that Hun Yo had already broken through to the 3rd tier. Meanwhile, the Empress had also refined the 3 Heavenly Venerable seals he had given to her. And what was even more pleasantly surprising to him was that his daughter had actually returned. Already? In the past, he had spent a whole epoch to finally complete extracting the power of dimension of 999 dimensions, which was as far as he could go. Afterwards, he shattered his core of power, and only then did he manage to take another step forward, turning his body itself into a model of the Genesis world, and cutting out an even wider path for himself. Why had Ling Shi already reached the limit after cultivating for around 10 billion years only? Chapter 2845, 2845 Primitive Dimension. Chapter 2845, 2845 Primitive Dimension. 2845 Primitive Dimension. Ling Shi had already obtained the best conditions in the world before she was even born. Both her parents were heavenly venerates, her natural aptitude was excellent, and she had only been born after the Empress had gone through close to 100 million years of pregnancy, absorbing enough heavenly venerable tier nutrition, and already being a celestial king upon her birth. Just how amazing was this? Ling Han had also retrieved a small world and instilled it into her body. Not only could she then have a burst of pseudo-heavenly venerable tier battle prowess at any time, she could also study the power of dimension constantly. How great was that? Under such excellent conditions, Ling Shi had reached her limits after only spending around 10 billion years. Ling Han could not believe it. "Precious daughter, why have you returned so quickly?" he asked hurriedly. "Father, I have decided not to walk the path that you and mother have walked," Ling Shi said. Though her voice was gentle and calm, there was a firmness that said no one could change her mind, which resembled Ling Han. Ling Han sighed. He himself was that kind of person, so he had no plans on convincing her otherwise. Instead, he asked, "What kind of path will it be?" "I plan to turn the small world inside my body into a true dimension," Ling Shi said. "I have a feeling that this will be stronger than if I extracted the power of dimension from 10, or even over 100 dimensions." Ling Han did not speak, pondering the possibility and future prospects of this kind of path. Facts had proven that those like the Empress who had directly extracted the power of dimension of various dimensions and fused it into a core were not as strong as Ling Han, who was nurturing various dimensions within his body. But Ling Han's situation was too unique. Even if others wanted to take the same path, it would not be possible. They would only destroy themselves. However, in Ling Shi's case, she had had a small world implanted in her from the very beginning, and it would slowly develop into a dimension. This was more or less the same as hysteria, judging from a certain angle. However bright her future would be, how far she could develop this dimension would depend on her own abilities. Low level, medium level, high level, or a transcendent dimension. This was very important. It was equivalent to a first tier possessing the power of dimension of a whole dimension, which could still grow exponentially, and this was very astounding. Of course, this could not be compared to Ling Han. What was nurtured inside his own body was an entire Genesis world. Precisely because of this, Ling Han's progress was overwhelmingly slow. Who knew how long it would take for him to take another step forward? However, the increase to his battle prowess with every step forward would also be exceedingly great. This was not about him. It was about his daughter. Ling Han nodded slowly. "This is a path that you have chosen yourself. Since you have made your decision, you must resolutely and determinately continue on this path." "I know." Ling Shi nodded. After a slight pause, she continued, "That's right, father. There is someone that I would like you to meet." Ling Han glanced at his daughter and couldn't help but feel a sense of alarm rise up in his heart. Fuck, there was a sliver of romantic sentiment hidden in his daughter's expression. Not good. His daughter was about to be snatched. Damn it, who was this damn brat? "All right, let that bra boy come," he said, suppressing his anger. Ling Shi smiled lightly with pursed lips. Very soon, she brought over a young man. Ling Han was surprised. Originally, he had thought that the one who had gained Ling Shi's notice had to be in the heavenly venerable tier, at the very least, but this young man only had a cultivation level that was equivalent to the immortal palace tier, and his strength could be considered extremely weak. "My name is Fourteenth. Greetings, sir." This young man clasped his hands in respectful greeting towards Ling Han. He was polite yet neither haughty nor humble, appearing to have very good bearing. Interesting. Even if Ling Han had kept his aura under wraps now, to say nothing of an immortal palace tier, even celestial kings would feel weak in his presence as they were completely overwhelmed by his aura. They would not even be able to articulately speak, and would definitely not be as calm as this guy in front of him. Ling Han felt a sense of approval for this young man, but he immediately warned himself mentally that this was the man that intended to snatch his daughter away. It would not be wrong to even consider him his enemy. He made close queries about Fu Tianqing's past, and discovered that the latter actually had had similar experiences as Ling Han. He, too, had come by opening the sky of a small world, and had only used several million years to attain the immortal palace tier, which was very, very extraordinary. Because of Ling Shi's gentle suggestion that did not accept refusal from him, Ling Han accepted Fu Tianqing as a disciple. He gritted his teeth. Wasn't this just welcoming the wolf into his own home, making it even more convenient for Fu Tianqing to court his daughter? But it was not good to keep a daughter with him now that she was grown up. Fu Tianqing was really very extraordinary. With the pouring of a great volume of resources, he swiftly advanced to the Celestial King tier in just a million years, advancing so fiercely that even Lu Yutong and the other women clicked their tongues in amazement. This brat was not all that handsome, but his bearing was amazing, graceful, and polite. So all the women had high expectations for him and treated him like he already was their son-in-law, which also caused Ling Han to almost yell with fury. Another 100 million years passed, and Fu Tianqing had already advanced to the 9th heaven. Even though he had a later start, he had already surpassed Ling Han's other disciples, and breaking through to the heavenly venerable tier was close at hand. With this kind of son-in-law, Ling Han actually should be quite satisfied, but whenever he thought that his beautiful daughter would be married off to this brat, he always felt the temptation to brutally beat Fu Tianqing up. Right at this moment, Ling Han received a message from Lin Xiaoyang, asking him to visit the Lin clan immediately. Ling Han set out as soon as he received the message. Aside from himself, Zhou Hong and Chu Hao were also present. I just received some news that a primitive dimension has appeared inside the void, Lin Xiaoyang said. What? Both Zhou Hong and Chu Hao instantly stood. How is that possible? The void should be unable to accommodate anything. The expressions of both the great 6th-tier elites changed drastically due to their great shock. That is indeed the truth. Lin Xiaoyang nodded and said seriously, "This is what Father has found out, and it has also been confirmed by the other 7th-tier lords." At this, both Chu Hao and Zhou Hong had nothing else to say. Even 7th tiers had already confirmed this, so there was nothing to be doubted about this. Is there anything special about this dimension? Ling Han asked. Lin Xiaoyang glanced at Ling Han in approval. This brat would always ask questions that hit the nail on the head. He nodded and said, "In this dimension, there is a great amount of what we call Heavenly Venerable Stone." Ling Han knew what Heavenly Venerable Stone was, a unique stone that could be used to seal Heavenly Venerable seals. Apparently, aside from the mind of a Heavenly Venerate, only this object was capable of containing a Heavenly Venerable seal. However, by itself, this actually did not have much value. The Heavenly Venerable stones that we have obtained here actually originate from that primitive dimension. They have struggled free of the power of dimension and appear in the void at certain timings before descending here. Lin Xiaoyang explained slowly. He paused and then glanced at Ling Han and the others. By itself, Heavenly Venerable Stone does not have much use. Aside from allowing the divine sense and techniques of Heavenly Venerable tier to pass through it, it could not be any more ordinary. However, Father has discovered that some ancient relics of that primitive dimension are nurtured inside these stones, like the young of the true dragon, supremely valuable medicines, primal chaos divine metal, and most important of all, there are also Heavenly Venerable seals. Hearing these words, the expressions of Ling Han and the others all changed at the same time. Then the value of this Heavenly Venerable Stone would be astonishing and would give rise to a full-scale competition over it. Then this primitive dimension will become an extremely important strategic location, Chu Hao said. Zhou Hong nodded. It will be attractive to all Heavenly Venerates, and it can be foreseen that great battles that will leave bodies scattered everywhere will take place continuously. Yet Ling Han said, "The void is Hysteria's territory, and it can traverse the barriers between dimensions, a world where it reigns supreme." If we ventured to that primitive dimension inside the void, would we then be attacked by hysteria? Chapter 2846, 2846, Heavenly Venerable Stone Mine. Chapter 2846, 2846, Heavenly Venerable Stone Mine. 2846, Heavenly Venerable Stone Mine. It was already not just once that Ling Han had encountered hysteria in the void. He could be considered once bitten, twice shy. He had no choice but to keep up his guard. Lin Xiaoyang nodded. The void is indeed hysteria's territory, but its main body is presently fighting Father and the others intensely, so it can only mobilize its doppelgangers. Thus, its battle prowess would only be at the 6th tier at most. We are completely able to match that. At present, there were around 106th tier heavenly venerates in the Flaming Frost Realm in total. This was an astonishing power. It was definitely no problem for their combined forces to battle Hysteria's doppelgangers. Lin Xiaoyang and the others discussed the matter, while Ling Han listened from the sidelines. Though he was incredibly freakish, he clearly was not yet qualified to take part in this kind of discussion at present. In any case, he had made his decision. He was definitely going to this primitive dimension, so he could obtain more heavenly venerable seals. It was not just the Lin Alliance. Every force was discussing this primitive dimension that had suddenly popped up. Everyone was doubtful. How could there possibly appear a dimension inside the void? It should be known that the void was filled completely with the fundamental power of the Genesis world. It was extremely violent, and only 3rd tier heavenly venerates and stronger could traverse the void. Otherwise, even 2nd tier heavenly venerates would be in danger. Yet now it was said that there was actually a dimension lying right within the void. How could this be believed? But while they did not believe it, various forces still set out respectively. Ling Han also brought the Empress and the others, with Lin Xiaoyang and other 6th tier heavenly venerates clearing the path as they headed towards that primitive dimension. The 6th tier was too strong. They discovered that dimension in the void merely over a dozen years later. Pu. They entered into this dimension, and when they passed through the dimensional barrier, it was like they had been squeezed into a bubble. Moreover, once they entered, they discovered that there was no energy of the void in this place. Instead, it appeared relatively peaceful. This kind of peace was only relatively speaking. There were still surges of an energy storm, but even the lowest level of Celestial King tier could tolerate this. Of course, this was the limit. Should an ascending origin tier enter this place, they would immediately be ripped into shreds by these wild waves of energy. Actually, it was also very dangerous for lower-level Celestial Kings to enter here. It was best that they had attained 3rd heaven and above. In that case, there would basically be no problems. It was precisely like that. This was a completely barren place, where there was no existence of living beings. When nurturing life, it definitely had to start from the weak before growing stronger, right? But living beings below the Celestial King tier could not survive here, so how was life supposed to come into being? Unless it was an existence that possessed Celestial King tier strength from birth. Ling Han and the others began to carry out large-scale construction here, building a fort that belonged to them. This was a wonderful time to stake a claim to territory. Otherwise, with the passing of time, the territory would have been divided long ago, and that was the most important resource here. It could be foreseen that carnage would begin not too long later. With the power of heavenly venerates, a colossal base which could withstand the energy storm here was built. In this manner, even people with low cultivation levels could be alive and kicking here. They just couldn't leave. However, as time passed, particular defensive tools capable of withstanding the energy storm here would definitely be developed. Ling Han naturally brought over all the heavenly venerates of Ling City here, and after the base was constructed, they began to venture out and explore, searching for heavenly venerable stone mines. In the Flaming Frost Realm, there were pitifully small amounts of heavenly venerable stones, and they were all scattered here and there, but here there were whole mines of heavenly venerable stones, and could be mined on a large scale. Their luck was not too bad. They discovered a vein of, or which could be mined near their base. Why was there a need to construct a base? Naturally, it was so they could have ordinary people come here. And why was there a need for ordinary people to be here? This was because mining would need their labor. Couldn't heavenly venerates do it? Of course they could, but it would be too wasteful of their time. Though heavenly venerable stone did not have any other unique traits aside from being able to cut off heavenly venerable tier divine sense, this thing was actually extremely fragile. If heavenly venerates were to forcefully mine them, the whole vein of or would crumble with a bang. In this way, even divine metal would be shattered. What more celestial king tier great herbs and heavenly venerable seals? They would definitely be destroyed as well. Hence, there was a need for a great amount of manual labor, mining the stones carefully, just like how mortals would be mining. Now, various great forces were staking territorial claims. For the moment, they wouldn't come into conflict yet, but as territory continued to be claimed, what would come next would definitely be the eruption of great conflict over the remaining veins of ore. Stones were endlessly excavated and then delivered to Ling Han, Zhou Hong, and the others. They cut open these raw stones, obtaining the good stuff hidden within. However, what was disappointing was the fact that inside most of these stones, it was still stone. Of course, they had not come out with completely zero results. They had still mined out the seed of celestial medicine inside the stones, and it was a supremely valuable medicine at that. This was no ordinary celestial medicine, but had rather been tempered by the fundamental power of heaven and earth, and was greatly beneficial even to heavenly venerates. This kind of great herb definitely could not exist in the Flaming Frost realm, because celestial medicine belonged within the range of regulations, which could not be surpassed. What use would they have for heavenly venerates then? But the great herbs here had long since died. Then, through the boundless passage of time, they absorbed an ocean of fundamental power, turning into great herbs that would be effective even on heavenly venerates. This kind of discovery stunned even Ling Han, Zhou Hong, and the others. However, the production rate of this kind of great herb was too low. They had cut open tens of thousands of raw stones, but they had only obtained one such great herb, and in the case of heavenly venerable seals, the chances were even slimmer. Only 1 out of 1,000,000 would contain a heavenly venerable seal. They continued to accumulate experience and discovered the good stuff they could obtain would increase the nearer they came to the core of the vein. The production rate of supremely valuable medicine and seals increased quite a few times over. This was speaking in relative terms. In truth, the chances were still pitifully low. Aside from supremely valuable medicines, there were also valuable things like divine metal or even devouring metal. It was as if this dimension was a massive treasure trove. Aside from feeling overjoyed, everyone also became more worried. At present, everyone was well off, and there was no shortage of mines. But when the mines they had control over were completely emptied out, just what kind of great war would erupt then? If Ling Han was honest with himself, even he thought that there was no way he would shrink back, and he was willing to contend with others until the end for the sake of mines. After several 100,000,000 years of peace, an industry quietly flourished, and that was the sale of heavenly venerable stone. That was because the chance of heavenly venerable stones producing valuable items was pitifully low, so some forces decided simply to take out their reserves and sell them. The greatest unique trait of this heavenly venerable stone was that it would not allow heavenly venerable tier divine sense to penetrate them. Hence, this kind of business was feasible. One could buy a heavenly venerable stone and bet on it to see if it would produce any valuable item. It was possible that one would spend an exorbitant amount of money only for it all to go to waste, but it was also possible that it could produce an astonishingly valuable item. In comparison to the ups and downs of cutting open the stones, selling the raw stones was more stable. Hence, more and more forces began to imitate them, and it actually became a massive market. Of course, star stones could not possibly buy the raw stones. Instead, one would have to use divine metal. Though it was practically useless to heavenly venerates, it was considered a kind of currency at the very least. After all, it was a necessity if one wanted to forge a heavenly venerate tool. Gradually, even a field of study appeared, and that was study of the raw stones. What kind of raw stones could possibly produce treasures? Through studying the veined pattern and the time they had taken to form on the raw stone, it was indeed possible to increase the chances of obtaining treasures from the stones. This had extremely great implications. If it was possible to mine accurately with every turn, that would be equivalent to gathering an endless amount of wealth repeatedly, and one's own cultivation level and strength would soar exponentially. Under such circumstances, Ling Han also eagerly focused his energy to begin studying this field. Chapter 2847, 2847 Superpower. Chapter 2847, 2847 Superpower. 2847 Superpower. After several hundred million years, Ling Han had only obtained 3 heavenly venerable seals. It could not be helped. There were too many heavenly venerates here. The Ling clan, Chu clan, Zhou clan, and Rong clan all had a number of heavenly venerates, and Ling City also had a great many. Added with the very low rate of production of heavenly venerable seals, 3 seals was already extremely impressive. And precisely because of this, the raw stones that the Lin Alliance had dug out were all used by themselves. There were none that were sold. Now, they could only actively explore newer veins. Ling Han went into seclusion. There were several hundred raw stones laid around him. These were the last few remaining. Some had even been bought from other forces. There were also some stone scraps beside him. Those were the scraps of raw stones that had been cut open, which he was using as reference. Yet this thing really had no rhyme or pattern. Some raw stones looked to be of excellent quality, with clear veined patterns. Logically speaking, they would definitely produce some valuable treasure, but after cutting them open, one would be greatly shocked. They were completely empty. There were also some raw stones that looked rough and battered, yet actually hid supremely valuable medicines, or even heavenly venerable seals. It could only be said that raw stones that looked better would have slightly higher chances of producing treasures, while raw stones that looked poor would have pitifully low chances. This could not be considered a pattern at all, because as the number of raw stones decreased, it was already impossible to use divine metal to buy those stones that looked excellent and could possibly produce heavenly venerable seals. Instead, one would have to buy them with the blood of heavenly venerable tier, or even supremely valuable medicines. It was because someone had extracted a 4th-grade heavenly venerable seal from it, which caused what could be considered a terrible conflict, leading to the deaths of over 100 heavenly venerates. From this, everyone knew that even 4th-grade heavenly venerable seals could emerge from raw stone. If 4th grade could be produced, then what about 3rd grade, or even 2nd and 1st grade seals? It should be known that Ling Han was already considered a freakish prodigy, but among the heavenly venerable seals he possessed, even the highest level seal was only of the 5th grade, increasing his battle prowess by 47 times. It was also rumored that someone had extracted a small beast from a raw stone before. It had already grown into a ferocious beast of heavenly venerable tier in merely tens of thousands of years, and was overwhelmingly strong. Additionally, there had once been a supremely valuable medicine extracted, allowing a 4th-tier great elite that had stagnated for a considerable amount of time to break through and advance to the 5th tier. Going from the 4th tier to 5th tier was an absolute leap. Just look at Lin Yulian and Xian Chihu. They had not advanced from the 4th tier to 5th tier even after a whole epoch, which showed just how hard it was to break through on this level. This news caused the price of better-looking raw stones to spike greatly. Some stones were so expensive that even 6th-tier heavenly venerates would frown. Just buying one would mean having to empty out all of their coffers. The problem was that no matter how good the raw stone looked, it could still be completely empty once cut open. Then, one would really be coughing up blood at that. Raw stones would only become rarer and rarer, so Ling Han very much wanted to master the ability to see through raw stone so he could obtain the greatest amount of profit at the lowest price possible. He continuously studied, his hands holding scraps of stone or raw stones, comparing them. Was there actually a unique ability for him to cheat and penetrate the layers of stone that even heavenly venerable tier divine sense could not pass through, and see everything that lay within? After several hundred years, Ling Han shook his head. This was really a beautiful dream. Since he could think of this, how could it be that others would not be able to think of the same thing? His strength was comparable to the 4th tier, but there were still 5th tier and 6th tier elites who were stronger than him. Why was it that he would succeed where others failed? Was he stronger than them? Hold on, there really was one aspect that he was superior in. A thought came suddenly to Ling Han. His greatest pillar of support was the countless dimensions inside his body, which allowed him to become a small-scale Genesis world himself. Since he was the master of a whole Genesis world, he should be able to master everything. Seeing through a stone should be a piece of cake, right? A thought occurred to him, and he felt that it was possible that he had found the right direction. He attempted to stimulate the power of dimension inside his body, communicating with the raw stone. The raw stone inside his grasp immediately crumbled. This thing was something that even a celestial king could easily shatter, so how could it possibly withstand the power of heavenly Venerable tier? Ling Han couldn't help but grin. If it directly exploded, would there be any need to explore this further? He took another raw stone and carefully controlled his power. Wong, wong, wong. Each cell in his body lit up one after another. That was the powers of dimension, and they were twinkling like a sky full of stars. When he had stimulated all the powers of dimension inside his body, his consciousness actually entered into a different space. He was stunned for a moment before ecstasy showed in his expression. This was the inside of the raw stone. He had succeeded. It actually was really possible. However, Ling Han immediately shook his head. Within this space, it was like his divine sense had sunk into a swamp, and every movement was difficult. He actually spent about 30 minutes to finally roam through the entirety of the raw stone. It was imperfect, but imperfection did not deny its excellence. It was still an extremely amazing breakthrough. Ling Han was sure that should he reveal this ability, the whole market would crash. The reason why stone gambling had been established was because no one knew what exactly lay within the raw stones, and those so-called stone gambling grandmasters one would only have slightly higher chances of making accurate deductions even now. Essentially, they were still just guessing. But it was different for Ling Han. He only needed around 30 minutes, and he would be able to see whether or not a raw stone actually contained anything. Perhaps an elite would kidnap him and use him as a tool for stone gambling. It was also possible that he would be killed off. An anomaly like him would have broken the rules and could not be allowed to exist. Ling Han decided that he could not tell anyone about this secret. He made a great many attempts afterwards, touching all of the raw stones here. Then, he took one of them. He had seen a piece of divine metal here. His speed was slowly increasing, and he was sure that when he was more proficient, he would be done with just a simple touch of the raw stone. Next, he cut open all the raw stones one after another. As expected, aside from the one that he had taken out, all the other raw stones were completely empty, and he extracted a piece of divine metal from that last raw stone. He couldn't help but break into loud laughter, filled with excitement. A piece of divine metal naturally was not much, but it proved that this ability of Ling Han was not an illusion, but really genuine. It could bring him indescribable rewards. Let's go, and rake in great profits. Ling Han went out, and was about to set out after calling over the Empress and Hunyou. However, when they saw how excited he was, Ling Han's daughter and Fu Tianqing also shamelessly followed him. Hence, Ling Han could only helplessly take the two of them with him as well. It was naturally no problem to bring his daughter. As for a brat like Fu Tianqing, though Ling Han had great approval of this guy's natural talent, just the thought that it was possible that he would be able to hook away his precious daughter made him feel an urge to kick him. They set out, heading to Culmination City. Originally, Culmination City did not exist, but since the emergence of the industry of stone gambling, Culmination City had turned from what was originally a small marketplace into this huge city, where a great many forces stationed themselves. There was no other industry here, only the sale of stones. Ling Han and his group entered the city, and wherever their eyes could see, there were lanes selling raw stones. The various forces all had their own raw stone lanes for clients to choose raw stones. but they could only choose. If anyone wanted to cut the raw stone open, they would have to buy it. There was no excuse of so-called picking up the wrong stone by mistake. The great forces managed Culmination City together, laying down a considerable number of rules for the public to adhere to. If anyone broke these rules, that would be equivalent to making enemies out of over 100 6th-tier elites. No one would be brave enough to do that. Hence, no matter how profligate anyone was, they would behave themselves. There was no one who would dare or could be exempted from the rules. In such an environment, it was not just 6th-tier forces that had raw stone lanes. 5th-tier and 4th-tier forces, too, had their own lanes. In fact, there were even some individual heavenly venerates that would occasionally find raw stones outside mines and come here to sell them off. To think that a dignified heavenly venerate would actually turn into a peddler, just the thought of it was quite amusing, but this was indeed what the Culmination City was like at present. Ling Han, where will we go first? Hu Niu asked. Chapter 2848, 2848, Raw Stone Lane. Chapter 2848, 2848, Raw Stone Lane. 2848, Raw Stone Lane. Anywhere is fine, Ling Han said. They searched for a while and went into the largest raw stone lane nearby. The most valuable thing here was veins of ore, and the least valuable was naturally land. Without veins of ore, it was completely worthless. Hence, every raw stone lane inside Culmination City occupied an excessively large area of land. Once they stepped in, they saw various stones of different shapes and sizes all laid out. There were a great many people that were picking through the raw stones. There were heavenly venerates, and there were also celestial kings. After making their choice, some would pay and leave with the raw stone, while some would cut open the stone on the spot right after their purchase. Undoubtedly, cutting open stones was an extremely exciting process. Everyone would be incredibly curious to see if there was any treasure that was hidden inside. If a treasure was revealed, someone would immediately be bidding on the spot, especially when the treasure was a supremely valuable medicine or heavenly venerable seal. That would definitely cause fierce competition, pushing the price to a frightful height. Of course, the grade of the great herb and seal would determine the final price. The group roamed as they liked, while Ling Han touched this and that stone. He would examine every raw stone he picked up for around 30 minutes, slow to the point of being annoying. All the raw stone lanes allowed their customers to study and touch the raw stones, as long as they did not damage the raw stones. Otherwise, the customer would have to pay compensation. At present, this belonged to the outer circle of the raw stone lane. The raw stones here did not look all that high in quality. Hence, the price would also be considerably cheaper. Every stone had the same price, but it was still as high as a piece of divine metal. This was already the cheapest. If they had entered the mid-grade or high-grade area, the raw stones there would be even more expensive, and every single raw stone would be priced individually, especially in the high-grade area. The raw stones there could not be purchased with mere divine metal, and could only be traded for supremely valuable medicines or even heavenly venerable seals. Because of Ling Han, who was burdening them, their speed was naturally extraordinarily slow. The Empress naturally could not be bothered with this, and directly sat down at the sidelines, while Hu Niu had long since raced ahead of them. Only Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing were still following Ling Han. In Ling Shi's case, she was patient by nature, and in Fu Tianqing's case, rather than saying that he was accompanying Ling Han, it would be more accurate to say that he was accompanying Ling Shi. Thankfully, Ling Han was focused on exploring those raw stones for the moment. Otherwise, he would definitely be overwhelmed by great jealousy. Scrap, scrap, scrap. This was still scrap. Ling Han was not disappointed. This was the low-grade area. In the first place, the chances of treasure being produced would be low. If he could profit with just these few stones, his luck was really too good to be believed. Hee, what is this guy doing? Does he think that he is a Grandmaster of raw stone? It can't be helped. The industry of stone gambling is flourishing now, and Grandmasters of raw stone are too popular. There will always be people who want to stick this label onto themselves. That's right. At present, Any Grandmaster or alchemy or weaponsmithing is not as popular as a Grandmaster of raw stone. It is inevitable that there would be crooks mixed in with the real Grandmasters, too many of them imposters. Behind Ling Han, there were a few young people that were conversing spiritedly, but their voices were very loud, loud enough for Ling Han to hear them clearly. Ling Han did not have the time to be distracted. He did not care about them at all. However, Fu Tianqing turned around and glared angrily at these young people. Ling Han was his master, his future father-in-law. These people were slandering Ling Han, so he naturally could not possibly just pretend he had not seen or heard it. What are you glaring at? That was a group of 5 young people, and they all had ribbons of iridescent light surrounding them. Clearly, they were all celestial kings. They were really very arrogant. It was clear that they had seen 9 ribbons of iridescent light wrapped around Fu Tianqing, yet did not show the slightest bit of respect at all. Within this primitive dimension, celestial kings were really very common. First heaven celestial kings were common, and so were ninth heavens. Added with the strict rules of Culmination City, celestial kings naturally needed not fear other celestial kings. No need to descend to their level, Ling Shi said calmly. She had a quiet nature and did not like conflict. Fu Tianqing nodded and proceeded to ignore these people. Hey, there is a great beauty. That's true. She is remarkably beautiful. Pretty girl, why don't we have a chat? Unexpectedly, when the 5 of them saw how exquisitely beautiful Ling Shi was, they actually dared to tease her. Fu Tianqing was outraged and was just about to make his move. Don't be rash. Ling Shi pulled him back. Culmination City strictly forbade fights. These raw stones were too weak and fragile, so if a fight really broke out, without even involving heavenly venerable tier, merely a battle between celestial kings would be enough to cause an excessive amount of destruction. Hence, fights were absolutely not allowed to happen in Culmination City. If a fight really broke out, then no matter how many raw stones were destroyed, one would have to pay compensation for them. Fu Tianqing glared harshly at the 5 people and made his decision. Once these 5 people left Culmination City, he would definitely teach them a good lesson so that they would never be so proud as to forget themselves. What is it? You still dare to glare at us? These 5 people were truly arrogant. Seeing Fu Tianqing's displeasure, not only did they not behave themselves in the slightest, they instead acted even more arrogant. Do you know who we are? Hee, nothing but trash, Fu Tianqing said calmly. He was Ling Han's disciple, so how could his tongue not be sharp? Moreover, with the large black dog teaching him from the sidelines, it would be stranger if he was not devious. Yet this was what Ling Han had personally instructed, to have Fu Tianqing study under the large black dog. Though he very much did not want to hand over his daughter to another, there was no way he could convince his daughter otherwise. Thus, he decided to educate Fu Tianqing as much as possible, making him learn various ways of being black-hearted and shameless from the large black dog so that he would become slicker, which was more suited for survival. Those 5 people were all infuriated. He actually dared to call them trash? Humph, just you wait. As long as you dare to come out from Culmination City, let's see if we won't beat you to death. They threatened. Fu Tianqing sneered. The person with the highest cultivation level among them was only a 4th heaven. They really did not know what was good for themselves. Clearly, they had some other basis for their arrogance. They had to have a powerful heavenly venerable tier backing them. Otherwise, there was no way for a celestial king to come here on their own power at all. Sure, I will wait for you, trash. Fu Tianqing made a sweeping gesture, meaning that he was going to sweep these trash into the garbage heap. The 5 people all instantly bared their teeth. Why did this guy have such a venomous tongue? One of them wanted to retort, yet one of the others with sharper eyes elbowed him, looking towards the entrance. Young Master Long is here. Instantly, the other 4 people looked towards the entrance and saw that there were 2 people presently walking over, an elder and a young man. The elder had gray brows and a gray beard, quite sage-like in demeanor. He crossed his arms behind himself, an expression of pride on his face. The young man was dressed completely in black, similarly looking very proud as well. Young Master Long. Those 5 young people all approached. The young man in black robes nodded. "Come and pay your respects to Grandmaster Niu." The five of them exchanged looks, slightly confused, but they then immediately bowed respectfully towards the gray-haired elder. "Greetings, Grandmaster Niu." The gray-haired elder nodded. "Rise." His demeanor was proud, putting on airs with his attitude. "Grandmaster Niu? Could it be that he is that slightly acclaimed stone-gambling Grandmaster, no Buchuan?" The five of them whispered among themselves. "What do you mean by slightly acclaimed?" "Grandmaster Niu is a well-known stone-gambling Grandmaster." That young Master Long hurriedly corrected them. "Yes, yes, yes." Those five lackeys all nodded, bowing repeatedly, completely different from how arrogantly they had previously acted. "Young Master Long has invited Grandmaster Niu. Could it be that he will be helping us cut open stones?" One of the lackeys asked. "Of course," another answered. "Our young Master Long truly has a reputation. He even managed to invite Grandmaster Niu. With the help of Grandmaster Niu, our gains today will definitely be amazing." They were all spouting words of flattery, and both young Master Long and Grandmaster Niu smiled at this. "Please help, Grandmaster Niu." Young Master Long clasped his hands respectfully towards Niu Buchuan. Niu Buchuan nodded proudly. He roamed around, assessing each and every raw stone closely. After a while, he set his eyes on a raw stone and immediately walked over. Without caring that there was another hand that was laid on it, he stretched out his hand to take it. Chapter 2849, 2849 Stone Gambling. Chapter 2849, 2849 Stone Gambling. 2849 Stone Gambling. Feeling a person come too close to him, Ling Han instinctively moved and struck out with his palm. Niu Buchuan immediately grunted and took a few steps back. His face turned from red to white, and then he suddenly spluttered out a mouthful of blood, feeling such pain that he could not speak. He was only a ninth heaven celestial king. If it were not for the fact that Ling Han had realized something had been off and withdrawn some part of his power in the nick of time, this palm strike would have been enough to kill him several hundred times over. Ling Han frowned. A puny ninth heaven actually dared to disturb him? "Grandmaster Niu, are you all right?" That young Master Long hurriedly raced over. His name was Long Xuan, and he was a first-tier heavenly venerate. Niu Buchuan felt a stuffy feeling in his chest and couldn't even speak. Even his eyes looked to be in danger of popping out. "How dare you? You actually dared to wound Grandmaster Niu." Long Xuan looked towards Ling Han, his expression arrogant. At present, what was the most popular profession? It was not alchemists or weaponsmiths, and not formation masters either, but rather grandmasters of raw stone. But it was not anyone that could become a grandmaster of raw stone. One would have to have an extremely strong spirit and be well-versed in analysis to be able to distinguish whether treasure could be produced from a raw stone. Of course, even the most amazing grandmaster of stone gambling could not possibly pick accurately every single time. Ling Han also looked towards Long Xuan. What Grandmaster Niu? Scram. With the height that he was at now, there was already no need for him to make any explanations. Moreover, it was indeed he who had chosen that raw stone first. According to the rules, once someone had chosen a stone, others were not allowed to contend for it, and had to wait until the first person gave it up. "How dare you?" Long Xuan said menacingly. "You dare attack a grandmaster of raw stone and speak so disrespectfully." Ling Han waved a hand at him dismissively, showing that he couldn't be bothered to give them any regard, and telling them to scram quickly. Niu Buchuan finally got his breath back and said, "Don't think that you are above everything else just because you are a heavenly venerate. It should be known that there will always be someone stronger than you. I don't believe that I can't deal with you." Grandmasters of raw stone were incredibly popular now, and were respected guests of various great forces. Everyone wanted to sell off the useless raw stones in their possession and keep the most valuable raw stones for themselves. In this manner, grandmasters of raw stone had become exceptionally important. To make a rough comparison, a grandmaster of raw stone was equivalent to an alchemist in the ancient realm, possessing outstanding status. Ling Han shook his head. No matter how popular a Grandmaster of Raw Stone was, they were just using their status to bully others. Wasn't it the support of a heavenly venerate that they relied on? Previously, though his attention had been focused, concentrating on finding valuable raw stones, it did not mean that he had been completely unaware of things happening around him. He had only been ignoring them for the moment. He looked towards those 5 subordinates of Long Xuran and glanced again at Niu Buchuan, his eyes becoming increasingly menacing. He possessed powerful battle prowess of the 4th tier. Merely with a glance, those 5 lackeys of Long Xuran immediately exploded into a shower of blood. Culmination City had its rules, forbidding battle. That was because battle could very possibly shatter raw stones. However, Ling Han had turned these 5 people into a shower of blood with just a single thought. This indeed did not comply with the rules of Culmination City, but Ling Han had 4th-tier battle prowess, so it couldn't be helped. Who would really call him to a serious accounting because of this kind of trifling matter? It was just a few celestial kings that had died, so what did it matter? They dared speak so cheekily to his daughter. Even if they died, no one would pity them. Didn't they know he was a protective maniac? Long Xuran was outraged. The other party actually dared kill in front of him. Ling Han ignored Long Xuran. Was there a need for any reason for a heavenly venerate to kill a few celestial kings? Of course, he was not one to kill easily, but would only move if they deserved to die. Instead, he looked towards Niu Buchuan. You refuse to yield? I refuse. What is it? Do you dare to kill me as well? Niu Buchuan was not afraid. As a Grandmaster of Raw Stone, he had prominent status and was the respected guest of various forces. Even a heavenly venerate would not dare to touch him. Ling Han smiles faintly. All right then, let's compete. Niu Buchuan sneered. Could it be that this brute wanted to battle him? What a joke. That would be too demeaning to his status. We will compete in stone gambling, Ling Han continued. What? Niu Buchuan was shocked. Ling Han wanted to compete with him in stone gambling? Had he taken the wrong medicine? You do not dare? Ling Han asked smilingly. Niu Buchuan sneered. Why would I not dare? I am worried that you will refuse to admit defeat. Ling Han shook his head. At times like these, even a 9th heaven celestial king would dare to act so insolent in front of a heavenly venerate. However, a so-called Grandmaster of Raw Stones could only be arrogant for a while, because there ultimately would come a day when the heavenly venerable stones in this dimension were mined completely. By then, Grandmasters of Raw Stone would be no different from trash. Sure, then let's gamble. We will each choose 10 raw stones, and see who obtains the highest value, Ling Han said. Haha, sure, Niu Buchuan sneered. In a fight, he was definitely no match for Ling Han, but in terms of stone gambling, then even 100 Ling Hans added together were no competition for him. What are the stakes? The Grandmaster asked. Ling Han grinned. If you lose, then you, and this brat, have to kowtow to me 10 times. Long Xuran immediately wanted to object, but Niu Buchuan raised a hand to stop him. Turning his head, he asked, Young Master Long, could it be that you do not trust me? This caused Long Xuran to hesitate for a moment. He thought seriously, that's right. What is there to doubt? Agreed, Long Xuran declared. But if you lose, you too have to kowtow 10 times to each of us. He was slightly expectant and excited. That was because Ling Han's cultivation level was clearly superior to his, so how pleasurable would it be to have a high-level heavenly venerate actually kowtow to him? Niu Buchuan also sneered. This man actually dared to treat him disrespectfully. Humph, did he really think that he was all that impressive just because he was a heavenly venerate? Niu Buchuan was a Grandmaster of Raw Stone. We have to have a time limit, Niu Buchuan said. One day. Sure. Ling Han nodded casually. He was getting more and more proficient at scanning stones. At the beginning, he had needed 30 minutes to complete a full scan, and now he only needed around 15 minutes or so. He was certain that this time would continue to shorten. Then let's begin, Niu Buchuan said. The two of them then began walking around in this area. Everyone knew that it would definitely be easier to discover treasures at the mid-grade and high-grade areas. But if they went there would not be much meaning to this competition. A confrontation and murder had occurred here, which naturally attracted the attention of many people. Some were asking their fellows as they made their way over. Lung Xiuran had the intention to make Ling Han and his group even more embarrassed later, so he naturally made public the matter of their gamble. No way. He actually dares to challenge Grandmaster Niu to stone gambling? That is Grandmaster Niu we're talking about here. Hee, I know who this is. His name is Ling Han. Ling Han? That guy who has broken records at the realm battlefield? Sigh. He's too arrogant. This is stone gambling, which has completely nothing to do with battle prowess. Haha, I heard that this guy is extraordinarily arrogant. I really anticipate seeing him kneel down in full public. Ling Han was a famous person, so it was natural that there would be those who recognized him. Once they heard about it, everyone shook their head. To say nothing of them, even Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing were worried. They knew that Ling Han's freakish talent in cultivation was indescribable, but this was stone gambling. There were more and more spectators gathered around them. Many people were no longer picking through the raw stones. They were just standing on the sidelines to watch, filled with anticipation. A prodigy of his era, a freakish genius. If he was really to kneel and kowtow in full public, just the thought of that happening was exciting. Niu Buchuan picked up one raw stone after another, studying them closely, but a while later, he would put them back. There was a whole day's time. He would not make his move rashly, but was taking note mentally. When it was about time, he would pick out those 10 raw stones that he considered the best of the lot. Chapter 2850, 2850 Stone Cutting. Chapter 2850, 2850 Stone Cutting. 2850 Stone Cutting. Ling Han was only touching as well, and did not choose yet. He wanted to take a look at all the raw stones in the low-grade area, and only then would he make his choice. With his ability, he only had to take a look at the raw stones that Niu Buchuan chose, and he would be able to accurately know what the latter's gains were. He would be completely able to make adjustments accordingly, and just win that slight bit more than the latter. Why did he have to do this? That was because Ling Han felt that tricking him just once would be too boring. This time, he would be humiliating them in spirit, and next time, he would deliver a severe strike at their finances. After making a full circle, Ling Han was slightly surprised. As expected, a book could not be judged by its cover, and it was the same for raw stones. Though this was the low-grade area, where chances of producing valuable objects were extremely low, he actually discovered a raw stone which actually contained a heavenly venerable seal. He did not know exactly what grade it was. Ling Han did not touch it, because once he made contact, the raw stone would explode. This would have broken the rules of stone gambling, and he would be directly considered as having lost. This raw stone was completely unnoticeable, and it was extremely unlikely that it would be taken by another, so he could just let it sit here first. It was no wonder that there were still customers frequenting this place despite it being the low-grade area. That was because everyone had the hopes of spending the least amount of money to obtain the greatest amount of profit. There were indeed people that could become wealthy overnight, but the chances of this happening were too slim. There were about over 10,000 raw stones here. Ling Han would make a note mentally with every stone he touched, and his speed was also getting faster and faster. Originally, he would have needed only 15 minutes. Now, he only needed the time necessary for a few breaths. There was no other reason. Practice makes perfect. Previously, Ling Han feared that his power would be too great and would blow up the raw stone, but now his control was getting more and more accurate. However, he had just mastered this ability. Hence, at the end of the day, he had not managed to touch all these 10,000 stones, but only completed around half of this number. It was fine. He could not touch all of them, and Niu Buchuan was even less likely to do so. He had only looked at around 1/5 of this number. Yet Niu Buchuan was not the slightest bit worried. Did Ling Han really think that he was already a Grandmaster of raw stone just by touching the raw stones? Niu Buchuan naturally thought that Ling Han was just putting on an act, a cold sneer at his lips. When Ling Han knelt down to beg for mercy later, he would harshly taunt him. Lung Xiran felt the same. He was even more familiar with Ling Han's origins than Yue Buchuan, and he was feeling very excited. An insufferably arrogant supreme prodigy of the past was actually going to lower his head and kowtow to him. Just the thought of him caused his blood flow to speed up. It's almost the end of the day. The results should be revealed soon, right? I am truly expectant. The one and only Ling Han will be kneeling to another. This is enough material for me to brag about for the rest of my life. Haha, we are both witnesses. Everyone was whispering among themselves, all hoping that Ling Han would lose. It could not be helped. Ling Han had been too impressive in the past, creating records that no one could even touch at all, which naturally garnered the envy, jealousy, and resentment of the rest. The Empress glanced menacingly at all of them. They actually dared to hope that her husband would lose? They were probably tired of living, weren't they? She was too proud, and there was only one word that she had for people like these: kill. However, Hunyo was different. She stuck her hands at her slender waist. Just you people wait and see. Nyo's Ling Han will definitely win, and you guys can just wait to be embarrassed later. Some people fired back retorts, while others put on a facade of reservedness. For noble and dignified heavenly venerates to argue with another was very improper. Hunyo might not care about this, but they did. Ling Han, I will give you one last chance. If you admit defeat now, I will allow you to only kowtow 3 times, Nyo Buchuan said, smiling slightly. It might seem that he was compromising, but he was actually still insulting Ling Han. To have a prodigy kneel was the greatest insult in itself. What difference did it make if it was kowtowing 10 times or 3 times? Lung Xiran was clearly aware of this, so he did not object and merely nodded smilingly. Ling Han's eyes turned cold. Did they really think that he would not dare to kill a so-called Grandmaster of raw stone? However, he would squeeze him dry first. Let's begin choosing our stones, Ling Han said calmly. Stubborn. Nyo Buchuan sneered. With his hand's guidance, 10 raw stones immediately fell into his grasp, and he then handed them over to a broad man next to him. This was a staff member of the raw stone lane. According to the rules of the raw stone lane, they could choose however they liked, but it definitely was not allowed to store the raw stone lanes into a spatial god tool or spatial celestial tool, because who knew if you would switch a raw stone for another? Stone gambling was also the same. The difference was that the raw stone lane feared that you would trade a poor quality stone in exchange for a good quality one, and in stone gambling, the fear was that one would trade a good quality stone for a poor quality one. Taking a high-grade raw stone, wouldn't the chances of getting treasure be greatly increased? Then what justice was there to speak of in this kind of gamble? Ling Han swept an eye over these stones, and already saw clearly through all the stones the other man had chosen. He made a mental comparison, and he now knew just how many of these raw stones would reveal treasure, and how much this treasure would be worth. He seemed slightly surprised. This Grandmaster of raw stone was really not just an empty boast. There were actually 3 among the 10 raw stones that Nyo Buchuan had chosen that actually contained treasure. However, that was as far as it went. Ling Han beckoned with a hand. Xiao, xiao, xiao. 10 raw stones also flew into his hands, and he handed them over to a staff member nearby. Open them, Nyo Buchuan said proudly. Together, an employee asked Ling Han. Ling Han smiled slightly. I'm fine with opening them together. After getting the agreement from both sides, the 2 employees began cutting open the raw stones at the same time. This kind of stone gambling was also very welcomed and supported by the raw stone lane because this kind of contest would bring a lot of popularity. With the boost in popularity, sales naturally would be boosted as well, especially when something valuable was gained. It would draw an illogical scramble over the raw stones. Everyone was gathered around to watch, seemingly even more nervous than the 3 people directly involved. Under a considerable number of eyes, the 2 employees began cutting open the raw stones. They were also stone cutters. They had already done this countless times, and were already used to being the focus of the attention of heavenly venerates and celestial kings, though they themselves were only the equivalent of ascending origin tier. It was good now that they were used to it. Their movements were proficient, and layer upon layer of stone was scraped off visibly. This stone cutting was also a field of study in itself. One could not directly slice the stone in half with a single strike. Why was this so? What if there was a supremely valuable medicine inside? It was possible that the great herb would be directly slashed in half with a single cut, and this would greatly impact its medicinal effects. Just how much of a loss would it be? It was the same for heavenly venerable seals. With a single strike, the seal would directly appear, and it was not certain who would be the one to obtain it. Naturally, this could not be sold off on the spot. Hence, one had to be extremely careful in stone cutting, though it was just worrying for nothing most of the time. As layer after layer of stone scraps was removed, the raw stone also became smaller and smaller. In the first place, it had the effect of sealing off the divine sense of heavenly venerable tier, and was not all that impressive in terms of toughness. An ascending origin tier wielding a celestial tool was completely capable of easily slicing through it. "There's something," someone suddenly exclaimed, pointing at a raw stone. That was the raw stone that Yue Chengwang had chosen. "There really is. Judging by the luster, it should be a piece of divine metal. Though this can only be considered as neither profit nor loss, even if there is something in only this one out of the 10 raw stones, this is already enough to prove that his label as a Grandmaster of raw stone is not just empty bragging." Everyone nodded. Stone gambling was stone gambling, and was completely different from battle. No matter how great your power was, you would not be able to use it. However, when it was discovered that it was divine metal inside here, the stone cutter's speed of cutting immediately increased. Because of the hardness of divine metal, he naturally had no need to worry or be careful any longer. With a few slices, he cut open the entire raw stone. As expected, a piece of divine metal the size of a fist was revealed. It was completely jade green in color. Regulations took form and entwined around it, showing 9-colored celestial light. Chapter 2851. 2851 There really is treasure. Chapter 2851. 2851 There really is treasure. 2851 There really is treasure. There was no shortage of heavenly venerates among those gathered here, so they naturally would not take a piece of divine metal to heart. They all looked towards the other stonecutter. The raw stone in his hands was continuously becoming smaller. As layer after layer of stone was scraped off, there still was nothing unusual to be seen. A scrap stone. Finally, the raw stone was only about the size of a pellet, and the stonecutter finally sliced the stone in half. It was still only white stone material on the inside, proving that this was only a scrap stone. "Hee hee." Yue Chengwang laughed, his expression very arrogant, but he did not speak. There was no need to speak. Reality spoke louder than any words. Ling Han naturally would not be concerned. This was equivalent to 2 people playing cards, and he gathered his own hand of cards under the circumstances that he could see what his opponent's trump card was. How could he not win in this situation? Unless his opponent had heaven-defyingly good luck, and had chosen the best for all 10 raw stones. Then, even if Ling Han could cheat, there was still no way he would win. Clearly, Yue Chengwang had not gained this ability yet. Continue. Both stonecutters took the second raw stone and continued cutting. They were both very experienced. It was clear that the first person had long since finished cutting, but he had not immediately proceeded to cut the second raw stone. Why was this so? Of course, it was for the sake of suspense and to keep the audience hanging. "Anyone fancy a bet?" someone suddenly said. "I will be the dealer. Those who bet on Yue Chengwang winning have stakes of 10-12, and those who bet that Ling Han will win have stakes of 10-15, and anyone who bets that the both of them will tie will also have stakes of 10-15. "I will." "Me too." This instantly drew the response of a great many people. Even if the stakes for Yue Chengwang's win was only 1:1. 2, practically everyone was betting that he would win. It could not be helped. He had already established a reputation. Moreover, was it not clear that he had already produced a piece of divine metal? This was a sure win. The Empress looked towards her daughter, and Ling Shi responded with an exasperated expression. The one who was acting as dealer was Fourteenth. Otherwise, who else would become a dealer while clearly knowing that they would be losing money? Though Fourteenth did not know his master's accomplishments in stone gambling, he was familiar with Ling Han's character. If Ling Han did not have enough certainty, how could he dare to take on such a massive gamble? Since his master was filled with such confidence, what did he have to worry about? He would take bets and earn some profit. The second raw stone was soon completely cut open. Both of them produced scrap stones, and there was no treasure. This was very normal. Grandmasters of raw stone were not that amazing that they produced treasure at every turn. When it was the third pair of stones, they were still scrap stones. The fourth pair of stones was scrap stones as well. Now they were on their fifth. Hey, there is treasure again. When the stonecutter sliced down with his blade, someone immediately called out loud. This is a great herb. Someone's voice was already trembling. Careful, careful. The others warned hurriedly. They were not just simply watching. If there was any valuable treasure, they would scramble to buy it on the spot. If the owner wanted to sell, they would then be able to buy it off him at the first instance. There was no need for their warnings. The stonecutter was already beginning to be very careful. This great herb was too fragile and could be very easily damaged. As expected of Grandmaster Niu, here's some more treasure. And it's a great herb at that. This is a huge profit. Everyone was musing ruefully. A Grandmaster of raw stone was really not just empty boasting. Niu Buchuan smiled, looking sage-like and extremely proud. Only his heart was throbbing wildly because he could just barely determine whether there was treasure or otherwise inside a raw stone with his accomplishments, but he completely had no idea how much the value of its contents would be. Even so, his rate of accuracy was not very high. Usually, his rate of accuracy would be only 10%, and 2 out of the 5 raw stones he had chosen this time had actually revealed treasure. This was indeed lucky. He naturally would not say this. He looked proud, as if everything was under his control. On the other side, Ling Han's raw stone was still scrap, and it had turned into bits of stone very soon. Lung Xiran was even prouder now, and said to Ling Han, "You can still forfeit now, but the number of times you will have to kowtow will have to increase to 5. Ling Han glanced at him. "If you want to die, you can just be frank. I can oblige you." Lung Xiran wanted to retort, but remembering Ling Han's terrifying strength, he forcefully swallowed the words that were right at the tip of his tongue. What was there to argue about this? When Ling Han knelt and kowtowed later, wouldn't Lung Xiran then have earned back all his pride? At that time, "I'll see what else you have to say." Very quickly, this great herb was completely removed from the raw stone. Seems like it is not mature enough. Judging by those great herbs that had previously been revealed, this is a great herb to boost cultivation level, but it looks bluish, so it is very young. Even so, this is still a supreme treasure. This piece of divine metal was really worth spending. Everyone was rueful. Some were even directly making bids, hoping that Niu Buchuan could sell this great herb off to them. Niu Buchuan did not speak yet when Long Xiran spoke up. "Everyone, I am really sorry. It was I who invited Grandmaster Niu, and he is also helping me to choose raw stones. At present, I have no plans of selling this." At this, everyone made no further bids. He had paid exorbitantly to invite a Grandmaster of raw stone, so whatever was cut out of the raw stones naturally belonged to him. "Continue," Ling Han said indifferently. For the 6th pair, both were scrap stones. For the 7th pair, both were scrap. For the 8th, scrap for both. For the 9th, they were both still scrap. Only the last pair was left. At this, even Fu Tianqing was getting nervous. Master can't have gambled too big this time, and trapped himself as well, right? Everyone shook their head. Only one more raw stone was left, so what would Ling Han have to get out of it to turn the situation around? Unless it is an even higher grade great herb. A prehistoric beast would work as well. It can advance to the heavenly venerable tier in just tens of thousands of years, which is truly frightening. Why don't you say that it is a heavenly venerable seal? Wouldn't that be even more amazing? This is just speculation in any case, So mere words are harmless. No one believed that Ling Han could turn this defeat around. This was the low-grade area, and the chances of producing treasure were already very slim. What more when it came to a supremely valuable treasure? There is something again. With another few slices, everyone gasped loudly. Of course, it was Niu Buchuan's raw stone again. The grayish-white stone material revealed a hint of crimson, flickering just like flames. Divine metal. Everyone nodded. Divine metal was not much, but it undoubtedly added even more brilliance to Niu Buchuan's halo. Sigh, just forfeit, someone suggested to Ling Han. There was definitely no point to proceed any further. Ling Han naturally was unmoved. He said to the stonecutter who had stopped, "What are you standing around for? Continue." The stonecutter scoffed mentally. Could it be that you are still hoping that some incredible, amazing treasure will be cut out of this raw stone and completely reverse the situation in a single stroke? That was too naive, right? He naturally was not qualified to lecture Ling Han and could only obediently continue to cut through the stone. Ling Han, if you admit defeat now, you only have to kowtow 9 times. Lung Xuan laughed loudly. Everything was already settled now. Grandmaster Niu, you are truly extraordinary. Someone expressed goodwill towards Niu Buchuan. Could you also help me choose a few stones in these few days? Niu Buchuan stroked his beard, showing a hint of pride in his expression. Allow me to rest a few days. After all, choosing raw stones is still very tiring. I have already worked for a day, and I need a good rest. This was putting on airs. Everyone understood this, but it couldn't be helped, because the guy was amazing. They could only continue to suck up to him. A soft exclamation rang out, and the stonecutter stopped moving the blade in his hand. What is it? Could it be that there is some treasure? Someone asked laughingly. The stonecutter had a strange expression. There really is treasure. What? Chapter 2852, 2852, Complete Reversal of Events. Chapter 2852, 2852, Complete Reversal of Events. 2852, Complete Reversal of Events. There was treasure? Treasure was contained in one of the raw stones that Ling Han chose. This is too lucky, right? He actually guessed correctly for once. But could it compare to a great herb? It won't be much else but a piece of divine metal, right? Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then shook their head. No matter what was revealed from the raw stone at this point, it would be useless. It was too late. That's not right. Someone was staring at that raw stone, and his expression gradually became serious. Even more people were exclaiming in succession. This looks like... It's impossible, right? Heavenly Venerable Seal. They hurriedly urged that stonecutter to continue cutting. Whatever they could see of the object now was still too blurred. When these words fell, Niu Buchuan and Lung Xuan could no longer sit by and became nervous. Though they had found 3 treasures, it was only that great herb that was really valuable. If Ling Han really found a heavenly Venerable Seal, then even if it was 9th grade, its value would still crush the value of their findings. Fu Tianqing sighed in relief. This master was really too evil. He had definitely done this on purpose, leaving the best and the only raw stone that would contain treasure for last, causing him to worry needlessly for so long. Couldn't you have cut this open first? That stonecutter continued cutting. This time, he was even more careful. It was extremely possible that there was a heavenly Venerable Seal inside this, and if he made the slightest mistake, the consequences were not something that he could bear. Even if he worked for the rest of his lifetime, his next life, and the next life after that, it would still not be enough to compensate. Cut, cut, cut. Layers of stone were scraped off, and the inside of the raw stone was revealed further and further. It really is a heavenly Venerable Seal. When a glimpse of primal chaos appeared, everyone was exclaiming. They could just vaguely see a blurred seal that was floating inside. That was definitely a heavenly Venerable Seal. They could guarantee it. However, they could not tell what grade this seal was, or if it was a seal that they had already mastered. Ling Han, How about selling this seal to me? Someone immediately said. Just name your price. It should be known that the grade of the seal is still unknown for now. I am also taking a huge risk here. Sell it to me, and I will give you a great herb. Another person made a bid. He appeared much more sincere, yet others rolled their eyes at him. He wanted to trade just a great herb for a heavenly venerable seal? Just who did he think he was? Ling Han waved a hand dismissively. I'm not selling. Even if he had already mastered this seal, he could still pass it on to the Empress, Hunyou, his son, or his daughter, right? He would never complain about having too many heavenly venerable seals. Everyone sighed, but they were not too surprised. There really were not many people that would sell off heavenly venerable seals. They all glanced sympathetically at Niu Buchuan and Long Xiuran. These two people should make good on their wager now. Niu Buchuan and Long Xiuran were both pale. Who would know that just when everything looked settled, such a great turn of events would happen? Fuck, Ling Han's luck was really too good, wasn't it? They definitely did not believe that Ling Han was versed in stone gambling. Otherwise, why hadn't he chosen a few more valuable raw stones? It could only be said that his luck was too good, and he just happened to guess correctly for the most valuable out of the lot. Ling Han smiled evenly. Now that you've lost Kowtow, Niu Buchuan and Long Xiuran exchanged looks. They naturally did not wish to kneel and kowtow in public. Otherwise, how would they still have face to see other people in the future? Ling Han, I can help you in stone gambling for a year free of charge. How about it? Niu Buchuan spoke up first. He still very much valued his pride. When everyone heard this, they all couldn't help but give an O in response. Niu Buchuan's abilities in stone gambling were clear to see. If they could have his help in stone gambling for a year free of charge, that would definitely be exceedingly profitable. Ling Han definitely had no reason to refuse. What is it? Do you want to die? Ling Han asked menacingly. He did not like killing needlessly, but the man had clearly lost, yet was reneging on his wager. In that case, he shouldn't blame Ling Han for being ruthless. Pa. Niu Buchuan involuntarily knelt. This glance from Ling Han was too terrifying. It should be known that he was only a ninth heaven celestial king. How could he possibly bear the pressure imposed by a fourth tier one? Now that Niu Buchuan had knelt, he had lost the will to resist. Though he was reluctant and unwilling, a bet was a bet. If he reneged on his bet, he would be similarly shamed. Furthermore, Ling Han had just killed people, and was a bastard that would not listen to reason at all. This kind of person was really not to be trifled with. Pa, pa, pa. He began kowtowing, 10 times in a row, not even missing once. He stood back up, his eyes spitting flames, feeling an urge to kill. Ling Han did not care at all, and looked towards Long Xiuran. It's your turn. Long Xiuran was defiant, and made a futile attempt to struggle, declaring, My father is the 4th tier heavenly venerate, Lung Dao. What Lung Dao? Kneel. Ling Han rebuked harshly. Otherwise, I will kill you right here and now. Long Xiuran very much wanted to stay stubborn, but he did not have the slightest bit of confidence to do so. Indeed, if Long Xiuran did not adhere to the rules, Ling Han would be completely within his right to kill the former. Even his father could not find anything wrong with that. At least, he could not use this as a reason to take vengeance on Ling Han. Furthermore, Ling Han was a man who was true to his word. Long Xiuran did not dare to gamble that Ling Han would not have the determination to kill. He knelt slowly, his eyes filled with rage. He swore that he would definitely ask his father for help and have him kill Ling Han. Pa, pa, pa. Long Xiuran, too, kowtowed 10 times. Ling Han smiled calmly and stretched out his hands, grabbing that heavenly venerable seal, which he then pressed into his mind. Very good. Though this was a 9th grade seal, it was not one that he was equipped with. Long Xiuran and Niu Buchuan were whispering to each other, and they both looked towards Ling Han after a while. Ling Han, do you dare to accept another gamble? Niu Buchuan asked. Ling Han glanced at the two of them. Sure. This time, we will go to the mid-grade area, Niu Buchuan said. He thought that he had lost because it was very hard to discover anything valuable in the low-grade area, and Ling Han had surpassed him by chance. But the mid-grade area would be different. The chance of treasure emerging there was higher, and its value would be higher as well. Niu Buchuan was going to win back what he had lost there. Okay. Ling Han did not mind. The winner can win all that the loser has obtained, Lung Shiran continued. Ling Han nodded. All right. This was not unusual. In a fight, the winner would win everything, and it was the same for a lot of places. Additionally, Long Shiran's eyes became sharp. I want to have a life gamble with you. Life gamble? Ling Han laughed in spite of himself. Are you even worthy of that? Ling Han was a second-tier heavenly venerate whose battle prowess soared directly into the fourth tier, but Long Shiran was only a first-tier heavenly venerate. What right did he have to bet on his life with Ling Han? Are you afraid? Long Shiran demanded proudly. Sure then. Ling Han nodded again. Since you no longer wish to live, then I will retrieve your dog's life on behalf of the heavens. D-Dog's life? Long Shiran almost went mad with fury. He was a noble and dignified heavenly venerate, whom even the heavens had to respect, and his life was actually called a dog's life. Master, the large black dog may bite you, Fu Tianqing warned from the sidelines. The large black dog was extremely black-hearted, and if he knew about this, he would definitely bear a grudge against Ling Han. This brat was not a good guy either. Lung Shiran looked towards Fu Tianqing, feeling that the latter was mocking him. Let's begin then, Ling Han said. In any case, his victory was assured, and he did not mind even if it was Long Dao's life on the line. They entered the mid-grade area. The raw stones here were far from as numerous, but the area occupied was instead even more expansive. One raw stone after another was displayed individually like antiques, and the lowest price for a single raw stone was 10 pieces of divine metal. Furthermore, there were some that were larger and looked better, and were priced as high as 100 pieces of divine metal. In fact, there were a few most valuable pieces that could not be bought with divine metal, but rather had to be bought with supremely valuable medicine or heavenly venerable seals. Chapter 2853, 2853 Betting with Life. Chapter 2853, 2853 Betting with Life. 2853 Betting with Life. Similarly, we have one day to choose, Niu Buchuan said. This time, he didn't have much pressure. Even if he lost, it would be Long Shiran who had to pay with his life. So Niu Buchuan was calm and bore a composed demeanor, with a kind of detachment like an outsider. All right, Ling Han said. There were about 3,000 raw stones here. With his current speed, a day's time was sufficient for him to sort through all of them. Having known that there was stone gambling in the mid-grade area, even the shopkeeper of the raw stone lane came. He was a white-haired old man. He appeared to be old and decrepit, but no one would dare to underestimate him, because this man was a fourth-tier heavenly venerate. The world has changed indeed. A dignified fourth tier was actually here as a shopkeeper. It wasn't that he had no aspirations, but rather that he was able to enjoy the benefits of his favorable position. If there was any treasure unearthed, he would get first priority in bidding. He was a fourth tier with the financial resources. In addition to some coercion, few people would dare not to give him face. He was given the title Great Clouds, and had been a cultivator for over a dozen epochs. Everyone was watching on the side. Perhaps they might learn a thing or two from the methods of Niu Buchuan. Great Cloud's heavenly venerate specially allowed Ling Han and Niu Buchuan to personally select their raw stones respectively and settle the final bill once everything ended. Niu Buchuan rushed out immediately. He was only at the 9th heaven. It was no problem for him to take out a few pieces of divine metal, but he was unable to take out a dozen or several dozen pieces even if he wanted to. Therefore, only under the circumstances of having the support of an extremely wealthy backer would he be able to come here to select what he needed. There was no helping it, as he hadn't been a raw stone Grandmaster for very long, and so he naturally didn't have significant savings. Ling Han didn't waste time, either. It couldn't be ruled out that Niu Buchuan's luck would be heaven-defying, with him picking 10 raw stones with the highest value. No matter how awesome Ling Han was, it would be impossible to overturn his defeat in that case. Both of them stopped talking and concentrated on looking for raw stones. Time passed quietly. One day's time was quite short indeed, and it was very soon time for the two sides to face each other with the outcome. Lung Xiaoran couldn't help becoming nervous. His life or death was about to be decided at this moment. Ling Han had looked through all the raw stones once, while it seemed that Niu Buchuan only looked through half of them. Although there were much fewer raw stones here, the quality of each piece was so good that the challenge of distinguishing one from the other became accordingly much more difficult. Ling Han smiled. Among the raw stones that Niu Buchuan hadn't looked through yet, at least 4 of them could be squeezed into the top 10. He didn't believe that Niu Buchuan's luck would be so good to the point of heaven-defying. Begin selection of the stones. Niu Buchuan stretched out his hand, and 10 raw stones flew towards him immediately with his grabbing motion. Ling Han made a move at the same time, and 10 raw stones similarly fell into his hands. The two respectively handed over the raw stones to the staff of the raw stone laying beside them, and cutting of the stones began immediately. The first piece was a scrap stone. Niu Buchuan couldn't help showing disappointment. He was full of confidence. With him making his move in the mid-grade area, it ought to be that each stone wouldn't have come to nothing. Unexpectedly, the first piece was a scrap stone. Fortunately, Ling Han also opened up a piece of scrap stone. Again. For the second pair, the two staff members were very careful. The probability of harvesting a treasure in the mid-grade area was very high, so they had to be extremely careful. "There's treasure," someone immediately shouted after a few cuts by the blade. "There's also something here." Someone pointed at Ling Han's stone. After a few more cuts, everyone's eyes lit up immediately as a great herb was actually unveiled out of the raw stone selected by Niu Buchuan. On the other hand, Ling Han merely got a piece of divine metal. The gap was so wide that there was no comparison at all. However, everyone didn't start placing their bids, because it had yet to be known who would emerge victorious in the end. The victor would obtain everything. There was no telling to whom this great herb would belong. This great herb is cyan in color, and it is 1 grade higher than the previous one. You can't even exchange it for 1,000 pieces of gold. Although there was no bid, it was still necessary to evaluate the approximate grade of this great herb. The greater the age of this peerless great herb, the better grade it was. Going by the order of 7 colors from red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple, red was the oldest and purple the youngest. However, it was said that the most valued medicine that had ever been unveiled was an orange-colored medicine, which was the supremely valuable medicine that previously allowed a 4th tier, heavenly venerate to break through to the 5th tier. Niu Buchuan was taken aback for a moment, and then burst out laughing, being extremely pleased with himself. Even if it was easier to unveil treasures in the mid-grade area, a cyan-colored great herb was still extremely rare. He was even feeling slightly regretful as he should have paid for it himself. Lung Xiaoran also showed a relaxed expression. This time he could be more at ease. The third piece. Niu Buchuan unveiled a scrap stone, while Ling Han once again harvested something. It seems there's some treasure, green in color. Is it divine metal? It's not clear yet. As they had no idea whether it was divine metal or something else, the staff naturally didn't dare to make too much movement and continued to carefully cut open the stone, peeling off more layers of stone. Gasp! Suddenly, everyone gasped. This was a great herb, and moreover it was of the green grade. The order was red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and then purple, so the green-colored great herb was naturally better than the cyan-colored great herb. This point didn't need to be considered at all. Ling Han had gained the upper hand. Lung Xiaoran's expression immediately crumbled. One had to know that his life was on the line this time. "Young Master Long, don't worry, the game is far from over. Please believe me, I will definitely turn defeat into victory," Niu Buchuan said hastily. Lung Xiaoran suppressed his wildly throbbing heart and nodded. Before this, Ling Han had also made a comeback on the last raw stone and managed to reverse a losing game in one fell swoop. Why couldn't they? This was the wonder of stone gambling. No one would know the outcome of the gamble until the last moment. Continue. In cutting open the fourth pair, yes, both sides still continued to get scrap stones. Then came the fifth pair. Ling Han continued to unearth a piece of divine metal, while Niu Buchuan got another great herb, but it was of the lowest grade, purple. The two plants together couldn't compare to Ling Han's one plant. However, in the end, the gap had been drawn closer by a bit. Again. For the sixth pair, Ling Han still got a piece of divine metal, while Niu Buchuan continued his good luck and got another great herb, but this time it was cyan-colored again. The combination of these three great herbs could just barely contend with the green-colored great herb. Lung Xuan calmed down again, as now the two sides had basically returned to the same starting line. Ling Han remained calm. He had already grasped the entire game in his hands. The seventh pair. Ling Han opened up a piece of scrap stone, while Niu Buchuan opened up a purple-colored great herb. Although it was only purple-colored, which was the lowest grade, the combination of the four great herbs was slightly higher than the green-colored great herb in value because it could only improve one's cultivation level and shorten the duration of cultivation. Meanwhile, if one wanted to advance to the next cultivation level, it was said that only the orange-colored great herb was capable of facilitating it. This was the dividing range. One orange-colored great herb was more precious than 10 yellow-colored great herbs. Lung Xuan calmed down again and even had a smile on his face. This time, he was sure to win. For the eighth pair, both sides opened up to scrap stones, and it was the same for the ninth set. Now it would all depend on their respective 10th piece. If both sides continued to open up scrap stones, then it would be obvious that Lung Xuan had one. "Oh, Master, do you need to play the game with such suspense?" Fu Tianqing complained inwardly. Although there was no evidence, he just believed that such a sequence of opening stones was within Ling Han's control. This master of his could really be very mean whenever he played around with people. "Open up the 10th piece," Ling Han said lightly. The two stonecutters picked up the last raw stone and began to cut it open. Chapter 2854. 2854 You bet, you pay, slain. Chapter 2854. 2854 You bet, you pay, slain. 2854 You bet, you pay, slain. It's scrap. Niu Buchuan's raw stone had to be opened up first, but nothing came out of it, and it was worthless. Even after every layer of stone had been peeled off, there still was nothing there. Niu Buchuan and Lung Xuan were both disappointed, but they kept comforting themselves internally. The possibility of Ling Han opening up a scrap stone was also quite high, and even if it wasn't a scrap stone, it was still impossible to reverse his defeat by unearthing a piece of divine metal. The stonecutter continued slashing his blade with extreme care, and a hint of primal chaos appeared very soon within the stone, looking as if mist. "No way!" everyone exclaimed. "Another heavenly venerable seal? Goodness, how many years had it been that no heavenly venerable seal had appeared here, and now there are actually two. This guy's luck is heaven-defying indeed, isn't it?" "Not necessarily. Perhaps he really possesses such an ability." Everyone was amazed. It was fine to say that you were lucky once, but twice in a row? Then it wouldn't be something that could be explained by luck, but rather the person's strength. Could it be that this guy is truly a Grandmaster of raw stone? On the other side, Lung Xuan's face turned pale. He was betting his life against Ling Han. Great Cloud's heavenly venerate's eyes lit up. Two heavenly venerable seals? Ha ha ha, then he would have reaped quite a good harvest. "I have lost," Niu Buchuan said bluntly. Facts spoke louder than words. One heavenly venerable seal was sufficient to reverse the slight advantage that he had previously possessed. Anyway, he was merely selecting a stone on behalf of another. Although losing was embarrassing, there was no real loss for him after all. There was no need for him to kowtow again, and he didn't need to pay with his life. Of course, he would never let Ling Han go so easily. This guy was obviously also a Grandmaster of raw stone, and yet acted as a wolf in sheep's clothing, completely deceiving him. Later, he would go find his senior brother to bet against Ling Han with stones once again. He simply didn't believe that he wouldn't win the bet against him. Ling Han stretched out his hand to seize his prize, and all the medicine that Niu Buchuan had unearthed earlier fell into his hands. The winner took all. He looked at Long Xiuran. "You may kill yourself now." Long Xiuran trembled all over. How long did it take him to cultivate to the position of heavenly venerate, transcending the common world, and becoming able to supersede the regulations? How could he be willing to die? "I can give you a heavenly venerable seal in exchange for my life," he said. Ling Han shook his head. "This isn't what we had bet on." "Don't be too overbearing." Long Xiuran gritted his teeth. He was a heavenly venerate, after all. Was the life of a heavenly venerate so worthless? Hee, let me say something. The great cloud's heavenly venerate suddenly spoke up. "Where it is possible to let people off, one should spare them. Ling Han, for my sake, just treat the bet on his life as a joke. Anyway, you also have gained a lot." Long Xiuran was overjoyed, and quickly clasped his fists in respect towards the great cloud's heavenly venerate. "Thank you, my lord." He vaguely remembered that the great cloud's heavenly venerate had a friendly relationship with his father, but it was too long ago, and he had only just realized it. A fourth-tier heavenly venerate had spoken up already. How could it be that Ling Han would dare to not give him face? Ling Han looked at the great cloud's heavenly venerate and said indifferently, "What does this matter have to do with you?" The great cloud's heavenly venerate frowned. "I am simply asking you to give me face on this matter. Are you not willing to do so?" Ling Han shook his head. "Firstly, I don't want to give it anyway, and secondly, you don't deserve to be given this much face." "What?" The great cloud's heavenly venerate was taken aback for a moment. He'd never thought that Ling Han would reject him. Ling Han was merely a second tier, while the great clouds was 2 cultivation levels above him. It would be like a grandfather beating a grandson. How could Ling Han have the confidence to refuse? Fine, fine, fine. Great clouds heavenly venerate sneered. "I insist on interfering in this matter. I would like to see how you can commit a crime in my face." Ling Han looked at the great cloud's heavenly venerate. "Then the person to die will be more than one." "Ha!" Great cloud's heavenly venerate sneered. This was funny indeed. A second-tier heavenly venerate actually dared to threaten him? He was practically seeking death. "Long Xiuran, you may take your leave. I don't believe that anyone will dare to hurt you," the great cloud said to Long Xiuran. Long Xiuran nodded. He didn't say anything further, as only his father would be qualified to repay this favor. He just needed to accept it. Ling Han moved and intercepted Long Xiuran. "Humph!" The great cloud's heavenly venerate sneered. "If you dare to make a move here, you'll see how I'm going to crush you." Why was an elite of 4th tier placed in charge here? Naturally, it was to oversee the territory. If someone was to seize the raw stone and run away with it, could it be that someone from other raw stone lanes was needed to stop it? One naturally ought to resolve one's own affairs internally, unless it would affect others. Ling Han directly channeled the 14th seal, boosting his power by 47 times. In an instant, endless power burst forth within him. Pong! He punched out, dispersed the blow of the great cloud's heavenly venerate, and instantly caught up with Long Xiuran, without pausing in the slightest. He stretched out his right hand and grabbed the other party's neck. Long Xiuran was shocked. How could he have imagined that even a move by an elite of the 4th tier would not be able to stop Ling Han? He wanted to dodge or block the attack, but he was like an ant in front of Ling Han. Tong, tang, tong. The great cloud's heavenly venerate retreated 17 steps consecutively before finally regaining his footing, but Long Xiuran had already fallen into Ling Han's hands and was being held like a dead dog. A 1st-tier heavenly venerate. It was a joke? There was the sound of sighing all around, and some people were so shocked that their mouths fell open and couldn't be closed. What was happening? A dignified 4th-tier heavenly venerate was actually pushed back by a 2nd-tier heavenly venerate. Although everyone knew that Ling Han was a freak who had previously broken records repeatedly, Witnessing this unbelievable scene with their own eyes still caused everyone to go numb with shock. At this moment, it was difficult to believe indeed. Is this the peerless freak? He has surpassed 2 cultivation levels. I think that even Xian Chihu and Wu Haoyang, could they have such battle prowess when they were second-tier heavenly venerates? Ling Han actually didn't even glance at the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate. A 4th-tier heavenly venerate could only fight him to a draw at most, and furthermore, trash like the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate only made him feel disdainful. He merely gazed at Long Xuran and said indifferently, "No one is exempt from repaying a debt owed to me." Long Xuran felt chills all over his body. What kind of freak was Ling Han that even a 4th tier couldn't even suppress him? Long Xuran initially wanted to intimidate Ling Han with his father's name, but even the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate was no match for Ling Han, so what was the use of his father's name? Spare me, he tremblingly said. After losing his trump card, and if he still didn't want to die, the only way out would be to beg for mercy. You bet, you pay, Ling Han said lightly as a destructive force surged out of his right hand, instantly obliterating Long Xuran's life. Immediately, a majestic force flowed into Ling Han's body, turning into nourishment for him. Here it was again. Ling Han frowned slightly. Of course, it was a good thing that his cultivation level could be increased speedily, but this ability was too weird. He still couldn't pinpoint the reason, but it made him feel uneasy from the bottom of his heart. Fine. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate looked at Ling Han intensely. He sensed that Ling Han's power could crush him, and it was all because the other party could channel heavenly venerable seals that were of much higher levels than him. This could only be said to be explosive power. If he couldn't obliterate this person in seconds, the rest would depend on the usual battle prowess in the end. He was confident that as long as he persevered through Ling Han's burst of power, he would be able to suppress this freak who was younger than him by who knew many years. Brat, only one of us can live, he spat out word by word. Chapter 2855, we compete again tomorrow. Chapter 2855, we compete again tomorrow. 2855, we compete again tomorrow. Ling Han naturally was not afraid, and merely smiled slightly. All right, if you want to fight, I will oblige. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate looked coldly at Ling Han. If you dare to step out of the city, I will definitely take your life. The two of them should be extremely close to equal in strength. If they went all out in battle, it was possible that the whole culmination city would be destroyed. Though the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate was a 4th tier, he did not dare to cause such great trouble. After all, there were too many high-level heavenly venerates here. Ling Han waved a hand dismissively. Whatever. This old geezer really did not know what was good for him. Ling Han just had to kill him then. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate humphed and left with a flourish of his sleeves. His eyes were filled with killing intent. It was not just because Ling Han had killed the son of his old friend in front of him. He also coveted the heavenly venerable seals that Ling Han possessed. This was just right. He could use this battle to kill Ling Han, and then extract his heavenly venerable seals from him. This old geezer was venomous. Though Ling Han could not possibly guess what was going through the mind of the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate entirely, he could guess a little. He sneered. Then he would just take a good roam around this area, and take away all the best stuff of the raw stone lane. Master, should we leave? Fu Tianqing asked. Ling Han glared at him. What are we leaving for? He just didn't like this brat, always exchanging looks with his precious daughter, and not acting reserved at all. He was really going to die out of fury. Father! Ling Shi walked over, looking at Ling Han with a smile. This was a gentle threat. Even if Ling Han had overwhelming strength in front of his daughter, he could only admit defeat. He did not speak further, and continued picking raw stones here indignantly. Without a gamble, he naturally could not be too showy. He only selected those raw stones that contained treasure and bought them. He definitely would not be cutting the stones here. If that happened, it would be equivalent to helping to advertise this raw stone lane. Moreover, one should profit quietly. He could not show off here, though he was already very showy. As Ling Han walked, he chose all those raw stones that contained great herbs and heavenly venerable seals. Actually, this kind of raw stone was extremely rare, even in the mid-grade area. He had only chosen 7 raw stones, and all of them contained great herbs. As for heavenly venerable seals, how could there be so many? He had really been too lucky to actually be able to unearth one from each area. Ling Han, do you dare to accept another gamble? Just when Ling Han had decided to pack up and leave so he could continue tomorrow, a voice suddenly rang out. After all, though Ling Han could see through the raw stones, heavenly venerable tier divine sense should not be able to penetrate them in the first place, so it was actually quite exhausting for him as well. After looking through over 10,000 raw stones in a row, he was slightly tired. Ling Han turned around and saw that the speaker was Niu Buchuan. Hasn't he learned enough from his last lesson? Haven't you lost enough yet? Ling Han asked smilingly. Niu Buchuan was indignant. Though he had lost twice in a row, that was all because Ling Han had been too lucky, encountering a heavenly venerable seal every time. It should be known that even if some raw stone lanes opened all the stones in their stores, it would actually be impossible to have even one heavenly venerable seal. His opponent had been too lucky, and it was no fault of his. Just look at his records. Had his chances of coming out with treasure been lower than Ling Han? Even a Grandmaster of raw stone did not have eyes that could see right into the contents of the raw stone. With his standards, it was already quite acceptable to have found so many good raw stones. This time, my senior brother will be competing with you, Niu Buchuan declared. Only now did Ling Han look towards the person that was standing next to Niu Buchuan. That looked to be a young man in his 20s. Wearing a smile on his face, he appeared very approachable and far less arrogant than Niu Buchuan. Yet you only had to take a closer look, and you would be able to tell that he was actually even more arrogant than Niu Buchuan, because even Niu Buchuan could not stand too closely to him and had carefully retreated around 9 meters, as if he was escorting a senior. What great airs! Brother Ling, my name is Bao Fengyu, this young man said, clasping his hands in greeting. Oh! Ling Han merely nodded, indicating that he knew, and did not say anything perfunctory like, I've long since heard of your great name. This made Bao Fengyu slightly displeased, who did not respectfully address him as Grandmaster Bao upon meeting him. This brat was indeed arrogant enough. Hiss, it really is Grandmaster Bao. This is the true disciple of Grandmaster Xuanlai, and his accomplishments in the field of stone gambling are extremely astounding. It is said that he has once unearthed a primitive beast. Is this true? There were still a lot of people nearby who had not yet dispersed, and when they heard Bao Fengyu's name, they were all moved and astonished. They all approached to greet him, addressing him as Grandmaster Bao, and Bao Fengyu finally showed a hint of smile at this. This Bao Fengyu actually has some background. Master, you need to be careful, Fu Tianqing said, drawing near him. Ling Han was just about to toss a glare at him, but when he spotted the warning glance from his daughter, he could only reply, My dear disciple, I thank you for your concern. He was almost spitting these words through clenched teeth. The daughter he had doted on and cherished for so long was about to be snatched away, and he actually had to force a smile. He really wanted to beat someone up. He could not beat this heart-stealing thief, but weren't there still 2 idiots here? Ling Han set his eyes on Bao Fengyu and Niu Buchuan. I just happen to be in a bad mood, and you guys have delivered yourselves right to my door. Sure then, we can compete, Ling Han said nonchalantly. The rules are the same. The winner takes all, Bao Fengyu said. However, if you lose, I want to add another condition. You will return those 10 kowtows to my junior brother. TSK, TSK, TSK. He was really quite ruthless. However, this also showed how greatly confident he was, clearly assured that he would win against Ling Han. Ling Han smiled calmly. Then I, too, will add my own condition. If I win, I will beat both of you brutally, but I will make sure I will leave one last breath of life for you guys. Bao Fengyu couldn't help but frown. He was not Niu Buchuan. Niu Buchuan had just graduated, and had not opened many raw stones, so he did not have much fame. However, Bao Fengyu was different. He had already graduated hundreds of millions of years ago, and the number of raw stones he had opened was uncountable. Furthermore, he had also personally unearthed countless treasures. To say nothing of low-level heavenly venerates, even 4th tier and 5th tier heavenly venerates would treat him as a respected guest and were very polite, which caused him to slowly develop an extremely arrogant temper. It was very simple. He had been spoiled rotten by their treatment. This brat actually dared to say he would beat him up brutally. Bao Fengyu was inwardly furious. Originally, he had just been convinced by Yue Chengwang. Seeing as the two of them had been tutored under the same master, he had come here. If Ling Han gave in and took the initiative to apologize, he could not be bothered to be too forceful either. But with how Ling Han was acting, he was really outraged now. "We will go into the high-grade area," Bao Fengyu said. Why were they going into the high-grade area? That was because the winner would take all. He wanted to take possession of the treasures that Ling Han unearthed free of charge. In the high-grade area, there was no need to have very high appraisal skills. One could choose some good stuff just with luck alone. He naturally wanted to take advantage of this. Ling Han waved a hand. "I'm slightly tired today. We will continue tomorrow." Was this guy afraid and would be running later? Bao Fengyu nodded slowly. Agreed. He had already made his decision. Later, he would command a few people to keep watch over Ling Han, preventing him from leaving Culmination City. With the social network he had established through these years of stone gambling, it was definitely no problem for him to get the help of several 4th-tier heavenly venerates. He had heard that even the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate could not stop Ling Han, so there was naturally no way he would have 2nd or 3rd tiers keep an eye on Ling Han. Then we will compete tomorrow. Chapter 2856, 2856 Competing with Bao Fengyu again. Chapter 2856, 2856 Competing with Bao Fengyu again. 2856 Competing with Bao Fengyu again. This time, Ling Han was not playing around with Bao Fengyu. He really was slightly tired and needed to rest. Of course, it was not impossible for him to forcefully proceed, but why did he have to do that? In any case, the raw stones would not be going anywhere, and the two people who were waiting for a beating had already stretched themselves out, so it was fine to keep the two of them hanging. There was no one here. When Ling Han and his group left, they just found a random spot and then entered into the spatial celestial tool. Naturally, they would be able to get a good rest. Of course, if this was in the wild, they would have to be careful and guard against the sudden palm strike from a heavenly venerate. If that happened, a spatial celestial tool would not be able to block it. Ling Han wanted to use a great volume of devouring metal to forge a spatial container just like the Black Tower. That really would be considered well fortified, and even a heavenly venerate would have to expend a great deal of effort to be able to open it. It was very difficult in the past. After all, there was too little devouring metal available, and Ling Han had to depend on devouring metal to be able to take that last final step. However, when this primitive dimension was discovered, it did not seem like it would be anything too hard to find another piece of devouring metal. Never mind this for now. Ling Han rested well. Using his brain too much was indeed tiring. A day later, they came out of the celestial guest residence and returned to the raw stone lane of yesterday. Hey, why were there so many people? Though there had been many spectators yesterday, there had only been around 100 of them, but what was going on today? To say nothing of 100,000 or 80,001, there were definitely 30,000 to 40,000 people here. Even if this raw stone lane was very big, there was still a feeling of being stuffed to the brim. This was because two Grandmasters of raw stone were going to compete in stone gambling, which naturally caused a great commotion. Ling Han had achieved fame in a fell swoop, defeating Yue Chengwang by unearthing 2 heavenly venerable seals in a row. This was definitely not due to luck. Furthermore, Bao Fengyu was even more famous. He was the respected guest of a great many high-level heavenly venerates, and it was not clear how many people wanted to befriend him. And now, 2 Grandmasters of raw stone had made an agreement for stone gambling, and it was a weird gamble at that, which was naturally an even greater gimmick, which people flocked towards. Ling Han scratched his head. If he had known earlier, he would not have decided to compete here. Wasn't this just free publicity for this raw stone lane? Never mind. In any case, this raw stone lane did not belong to the great cloud's heavenly venerate, after all. Ling Han, you really dared to come, Bao Fengyu said coldly. He had endured for a whole day, and he really was displeased to the extreme now. He couldn't be bothered to put on his usual act of being approachable and friendly anymore. Ling Han was surprised. Why would I not? I am a great heavenly venerate, and you are but a mere ninth heaven. How could it be that I would be scared of you? You are disrespecting a heavenly venerate, so be careful that I don't skin you for that. Bao Fengyu's expression changed drastically. The present world situation had spoiled grandmasters of raw stone to be arrogant and willful, but everyone knew that there ultimately would come a day when raw stones would be mined completely. At that time, the so-called grandmasters of raw stone would just be trash. In the past, they had strutted around proudly in front of heavenly venerates, forcing them to smile and speak to them. Did one really think that heavenly venerates had no temper? Heavenly venerates were those that even the heavens had to respect, so how could disrespect be condoned? Once the time came, it was definite that a great number of raw stone grandmasters would be called to an accounting, and they would suffer a tragic end. But it could not be helped. Being flattered in this manner by heavenly venerates, how could one not swell up with pride? For example, Bao Fengyu's natural talent in cultivation was actually average, and he had just barely made it into the Celestial King tier. Originally, he should have just attained the first heaven at most, but who would have imagined that he would be extremely talented in stone gambling? This gave him a new lease on life. Hence, with the great number of treasures poured on him, he was forcefully pushed to the heights of the ninth heaven. Of course, heavenly venerable tier was not something that could be attained by forceful pushing. This really was the final destination of his boundless lifetime. But going from the first heaven to ninth heaven was already an incredibly astonishing leap. Everything was due to his ability in stone gambling. So how could he not be proud? How could his ego not get greater and greater? How could his heirs not become bigger as time passed? And now, these words from Ling Han seemed to have shattered the false words that he had used to numb himself, and clearly show that he was only a ninth heaven, while the former was a lofty heavenly venerate. Bao Fengyu's expression was livid, and his heart grew resentful. So what if Ling Han was a heavenly venerate? Bao Fengyu might not be able to reach heavenly venerable tier, but he could make heavenly venerates lower their heads, or even kneel down and kowtow to him. Spare the nonsense and begin the competition, he shouted at Ling Han. Ling Han set his eyes on this man. Had the present grandmasters of raw stone really been spoiled rotten? Fine then, he would strike a blow to these people's pride today. They entered the high-grade area of this raw stone lane. The great cloud's heavenly venerate was already standing by here. His expression was not friendly. He had accumulated a whole day of anger, and this was a little harsh on him. Everyone is limited to taking 3 pieces. Agreed? Bao Fengyu asked Ling Han. Sure. Ling Han nodded. The raw stones in this high-grade area were truly expensive. At the very least, they would have to be bought with the blood of heavenly venerates. There were around 100 of them in total. The smallest was only the size of a fist, while the largest was more than 3 meters tall. But the similarity was that every raw stone was covered with a dense network of veiled patterns, and there was a mysterious design about them, as if they themselves were heavenly venerable seals. Of course, this was only a misconception. The high-grade area could also produce scrap stones, but, relatively speaking, the number was much smaller, and the chance of unearthing something valuable was considerably higher as well. The time limit is 1 day, Bao Fengyu continued. Okay, Ling Han agreed casually. He really didn't care. The two of them did not speak further, and began their selection of raw stones. I really had not imagined that Ling Han would really be so amazing to actually be competing with Grandmaster Bao. What Grandmaster Bao? There was one thing that Ling Han did not say wrong. He is a mere ninth heaven, capable of discerning a few stones, and he dares to act superior in front of a heavenly venerate? That's right. He must have been spoiled by others. As expected, Ling Han is a real troublemaker. This is truly impressive. Humph, it's about time to deliver a harsh strike to the pride of those so-called Grandmasters of raw stone, so that they can recognize who they are and what their true status is. But did you guys notice something? In the past, the Grandmasters of raw stone were all celestial kings, and not one of them was a heavenly venerate. Now that you're saying it, that really is the case. It seems like there is a unique power that has prevented a heavenly venerate from becoming a Grandmaster of raw stone. Up until now, everyone looked towards Ling Han. He really was a freak. He was the first to achieve these. A heavenly venerate was also able to become a Grandmaster of raw stone. This is like a curse. Heavenly venerates can get no reaction from heavenly venerable stones. It should be the power of heaven and earth that is messing around, right? It may also be that the fundamental powers of the Genesis world are incompatible with heavenly venerable stones. Everyone began to wonder and made their deductions. It was not clear who had guessed some part of it, but it was also possible that all of them were wrong. Setting them aside, Ling Han walked slowly, stretching out his hands to lay them on the raw stones. With the level of his proficiency now, he really just had to touch them with his hand, and the contents of the raw stone would appear completely in his mind's eye. Ling Han couldn't help but nod. The chances of treasure were really high in the high-grade area, but it was not definite that the possibility of truly valuable treasure being unearthed would be higher than the mid-grade area, or even the low-grade area. At least, he had not encountered a single heavenly venerable seal up till now. There were few raw stones here, so he would have to move faster and grab those raw stones that he thought were excellent. However, because the gamble was going to be decided based on 3 raw stones, the number of raw stones he could grasp could not exceed 3. If there were more than 3, he would have to replace those extra ones he had picked out. Otherwise, if he took all the raw stones, what would his opponent do? After touching around 20 of them, Ling Han finally picked his first one. There was a great herb inside here. It was a green-colored great herb and was extremely old. He picked through over a dozen more pieces, and Ling Han chose his second piece. This was another great herb, but it was green in color. Just when he was about to make a whole circle around the 100 stones, Ling Han touched a raw stone, and a hint of shock involuntarily showed in his expression. Chapter 2857, 2857 3 Raw Stones. Chapter 2857, 2857 3 Raw Stones. 2857 3 Raw Stones. There was treasure in this raw stone, but it was actually an earthworm. Really, this raw stone was only the size of a fist and completely red in color. It was covered with a dense network of veins laid out in a pattern. Was this considered a primitive beast? Ling Han rubbed his chin. Would this eventually become an earthworm heavenly venerate in the future? After some thought, he still picked up this raw stone. A raw stone that contained a primitive beast was extremely rare. Even if it was not for the sake of this gamble, he was also interested to play around with it. In any case, he had already glanced through all the raw stones here, so it was definite that he could win. A day later, the 2 of them had chosen their 3 raw stones. "I will open them myself," Bao Fengyu said. He preferred to personally open his own stones. The scene of cheers from all the people around him when precious treasures were revealed excited him greatly. Ling Han did not mind either way, and he said to the stonecutter next to him, "You help me open?" "Yes, my lord." The stonecutter hurriedly nodded. He was only the equivalent of ascending origin tier. In front of a heavenly venerate, he was an existence that could not be any more negligible. "Open this one first." Ling Han pointed at that raw stone that contained a blue-colored great herb. The stonecutter started, and Bao Fengyu started moving as well. Though raw stones were not very hard, it was also a task of labor for an ascending origin tier. Hence, the stonecutter was moving very slowly, while Bao Fengyu's movements were fast. Layer after layer of stone was scraped off, and a hint of blue was revealed very soon. "Is it divine metal?" someone asked. If it was divine metal, then it would be worthless. It's not divine metal. It's a great herb. Someone's eyes immediately focused. Bao Fengyu showed a hint of pride and sliced a few more times. As expected, the shape of a herb could just be vaguely seen. That really is a great herb. It has to be admitted that he does indeed have some skills. He is worthy of being called a Grandmaster. He is Yue Chengwang's senior brother, after all, the most senior disciple of Grandmaster Xuanlai. Everyone was musing ruefully. Bao Fengyu might be proud, but he did have the right to be. At least he could enjoy outstanding social status and become a respected guest of heavenly venerates in this dimension before the raw stones were completely mined. Very quickly, this great herb was unearthed, and it was completely blue in color. Though it is only blue in color, it is still impressive. Everyone shook their head. Some wanted to offer bids, yet they were convinced by others not to. That was because this was stone gambling. Before this ended, who knew whom this great herb would ultimately belong to? The stonecutter was much slower, and he had only just scraped off the outermost layer of stone after quite a while. There's treasure here as well, someone called out. That's very normal. This is the high-grade area. The chances of encountering treasure are very high, but most of the time, it is actually still divine metal. Someone beside him shook his head. True. The person from before no longer thought this was anything strange and decided to just wait and see. Everyone was watching them, and even if Bao Fengyu's expression was filled with pride and nonchalance, he stopped his movements and directed his attention to the other side. And Yue Chengwang even stretched out his neck to look. He really could not afford to lose. Green? Is it green-colored divine metal? Or a green-colored great herb? Everyone could confirm that this was definitely not a heavenly venerable seal, but whether it was divine metal, a great herb, or a primitive beast, it still could not be distinguished yet. Cut, cut, cut. That stonecutter sliced carefully and scraped off layer after layer of stone, revealing even more of the contents. It is a great herb. It is a green-colored great herb. Heavens! Everyone exclaimed in surprise. This really was coincidental. Bao Fengyu had just unearthed a great herb, and Ling Han did as well. Furthermore, there was no need to compare the two. Green was better than blue, and this was something that everyone knew very well. In the first round, it was Ling Han's victory. Bao Fengyu's expression was slightly livid, but he was not too concerned. He had deliberately decided this sequence of stone cutting, and the objects that would be unearthed from the remaining two would be even better. He did not say anything and continued his stone cutting. Very quickly, enough of the stone had been scraped off, revealing yet another color that was not grayish-white. It is a green-colored great herb, someone exclaimed. Bao Fengyu was proud of himself. Did everyone think that he could not pick out any treasures? Ling Han merely smiled, and as the stonecutter slowly and carefully did his work, a color that was not grayish-white was also revealed here. Green. It can't be, right? Everyone faltered. Just now, Bao Fengyu had unearthed a blue-colored great herb, and Ling Han had immediately countered with a green-colored great herb, which was just slightly better. Now, Bao Fengyu had unearthed a green-colored great herb, yet it was possible that Ling Han had unearthed a hint of green, which meant that his odds were still slightly better. Could it be so coincidental twice? No, no, no. How could there be so many coincidences in this world? But if Ling Han had deliberately arranged the sequence like this, that would have been even more frightening. This meant that not only did Ling Han know the raw stones that he had chosen like the back of his hand, he was also very aware of his opponent's cards as well. But was that possible? These were raw stones, and even 7th-tier heavenly venerates could not possibly see through them. Everyone was staring intently, wanting nothing more than to kick that stonecutter aside. You are too fucking slow. I'll do it. A heavenly venerate could no longer hold back. Scrambling forwards, he pushed the stonecutter aside, directly using his hand like a blade to slice through the stone. The power of heavenly venerable tier was naturally sharper than divine metal, and this was the hand of a heavenly venerate at that, so he naturally could control it at will. Very quickly, a green-colored great herb appeared. It really is. Everyone couldn't help but wear a strange expression. This had been deliberate. This was definitely deliberate. The heavenly venerate that had opened the stone showed a hint of surprise. This is not a great herb for improving cultivation level. Ah! Everyone gasped again. Then what was it? Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang both sighed in relief. Were they about to reverse their situation now? This is a saintly medicine for healing injuries, which is even rarer, that heavenly venerate said. What? Instantly, many people's eyes became bloodshot. Though heavenly venerates were said to be respected by even the heavens, in truth, their existence was not condoned by the heaven and earth. Hence, when a heavenly venerate suffered injuries, they had to heal their own injuries. No medicine would be effective because heavenly venerates had surpassed regulations, so how could medicines that were still within the range of regulations be effective? But in this separated dimension, celestial medicines had wilted who knew how many years ago, yet had been mysteriously sealed in stones, absorbing the fundamental powers of the Genesis world for countless years, which allowed them to be capable of advancing the cultivation level of cultivators. And the even rarer great herbs could heal the injuries sustained by a heavenly venerate. It was true that heavenly venerates could recover injuries automatically, but what time would they have for self-recovery in battle? Thus, the value of this kind of great herb was amazing, superior to that of other green-colored great herbs. That heavenly venerate reluctantly handed this great herb to Ling Han, and couldn't help but ask, "Brother Ling, would you mind parting with a leaf?" Ling Han smiled. "Let's talk about this later." That heavenly venerate nodded. The competition had not yet ended. He was too anxious. "Senior brother, what should we do?" Yue Chengwang looked towards Bao Fengyu, so nervous that cold sweat was dripping down his forehead. Bao Fengyu's expression was livid, and he exclaimed, "What is the rush? There is still the last piece." He did not believe that Ling Han's third raw stone would still be able to surpass his. He definitely would be turning the tables on Ling Han. He moved and began to cut into the last raw stone. Bao Fengyu was filled with confidence. The third raw stone would definitely reveal some extremely rare treasure. His insight would definitely not be mistaken. However, as white stone scraps flew, the stone continuously shrank in size, but not a single bit of thing was revealed. Finally, this was proven to be a scrap stone. Bao Fengyu's mouth was half gaping, his expression extremely complicated and very hilarious. Chapter 2858, 2858 Arrogant Attitude. Chapter 2858, 2858 Arrogant Attitude. 2858 Arrogant Attitude. Initially, Bao Fengyu had hoped that he would be able to turn the whole situation around with the last raw stone, yet reality struck him a heavy blow. It was actually a scrap stone. Originally, this would be very normal. Even a Grandmaster of raw stone could not guess accurately every time. However, he had his heart set on turning this defeat into victory, yet could not even glimpse the slightest bit of hope, so how could he not feel dejected? That heavenly venerate from before continued the stone cutting. Actually, this was a very strong feeling of accomplishment to personally unearth a rare treasure. Even a heavenly venerate would be emotionally moved. Though he had already opened one, he did not mind opening another. He soon exclaimed in surprise because he could already see a slight part of the form inside. "What is it?" the people around him all asked. "Strange," he murmured to himself. Everyone was extremely curious. "Just what is strange? Can't you just say it directly?" That heavenly venerate continued opening the stone. With how strong his power was, the layers of stone turned to dust and fluttered down with a rub of his hand, soon revealing the object that lay within. Everyone had a strange expression. It was no wonder that the heavenly venerate would feel it was strange. They, too, felt this was strange. There was actually an earthworm inside. It was completely pink, looking no different than any ordinary breed. There was actually an earthworm contained inside the raw stone. Could this also be considered a primitive beast? Everyone grimaced at this slightly. Only Ling Han could unearth something like this which would render others speechless. Ling Han set the matter aside for now, and directly grabbed the 2 great herbs that Bao Fengyu had unearthed. Whatever the 3rd raw stone contained, he had already won. Pong, pong, pong. He moved quickly, giving a severe beating to Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang. He had never accepted being threatened. If anyone dared to provoke him, he would be beating them up. If anyone wanted to kill him, he would kill them in return. After the beating, Ling Han glanced at the great cloud's heavenly venerate. If this old geezer made a move on him, he would definitely hold nothing back. The great cloud's heavenly venerate's heart involuntarily stopped for a moment, but he immediately looked back at Ling Han. How could it be that he would be afraid? I hope you can keep it up. Don't give up, don't lose hope, and continue to challenge me to stone gambling, Ling Han said to Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang. These 2 were quite good people, spending money to present gifts to him. They should be praised. Both Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang were depressed. Hearing Ling Han's words, wasn't this just treating them like bringers of wealth? They were both indignant and furious, wanting nothing more than to swallow Ling Han alive. Ling Han, don't be too proud of yourself. We will ask our master to come, and he will definitely defeat you. Bao Fengyu shouted. I very much anticipate that, Ling Han said smilingly. Here was another person going to present gifts to him. He naturally welcomed that very much. Humph. Yue Chengwang and Bao Fengyu left angrily. They would definitely ask their master to appear and defeat Ling Han. Brother Ling Han. Once the 2 of them left, a great many people instantly gathered around him. They were all longing for the great herbs in Ling Han's possession. If this had not been in Culmination City, where the destruction caused by a battle of heavenly venerates would be too severe, and would draw the suppression of powerful figures, they would have definitely already made their move by now. They all wanted to buy the great herbs in Ling Han's possession, especially that healing type. It could very possibly save their lives. Ling Han tossed out these words. If they wanted to buy, sure, but it could only be traded for heavenly venerable seals. He had no shortage of divine metal. Moreover, just look at the high-grade area. Since when was divine metal accepted for the purchase of raw stones here? Even raw stones could not be bought with divine metal. What more supremely valuable medicine? Ling Han continued shopping here, buying all the valuable raw stones. For this, he paid a price of 4 supremely valuable medicines, but his gains far surpassed his costs. However, there was not a single heavenly venerable seal to be seen, which Ling Han was inevitably disappointed by. However, it was already acceptable to have managed to obtain 2 heavenly venerable seals in a single raw stone lane. Ling Han took these raw stones and left. He was in no rush to unearth the great herbs. Actually, raw stones were the best material for preservation. Once they were unearthed, the essence of the medicine would inevitably begin to disperse. He closely examined that earthworm, but what was disappointing was that this earthworm had long since lost all signs of life. However, after a closer look, he discovered that this was actually not a real earthworm, but rather a great herb. This should be celestial medicine, and it was presently in the stage of taking form. Before it had completed this stage, it had encountered an unknown calamity, and had then been sealed inside this raw stone. Hence, though it had absorbed a great amount of fundamental power of the Genesis world, it was presently neither a great herb nor a beast, which was extremely strange. Ling Han put the earthworm away. Though he did not know what it could be used for now, he might have some use for it in future. He had also unearthed several great herbs, the kind that could improve cultivation level, which he handed to the Empress, Hun Yo, and Ling Shi, respectively. As for Fu Tianqing, he was still tempering his foundations, and had not yet advanced to the heavenly venerable tier, so even if he consumed it now, it would only be wasted. Who would complain about having a higher cultivation level? After Ling Han had digested all these great herbs, he decided to move out again. He deliberately exited Culmination City. If anyone had any designs on him, he would settle the matter once and for all. He possessed the ability to turn the life essence of heavenly venerates into his own cultivation. Though he did not very much want to use this ability, who asked others to be so determined to deliver themselves to him. He would not waste their efforts. He arrived outside the city and did not hide his tracks at all. It was as if he was just asking for them to rob him. Unfortunately, he was disappointed. Even the great cloud's heavenly venerate did not appear, which caused his anticipation to come to naught. He returned to Culmination City and continued to rake in valuable raw stones. Ling Han. He had just entered a city when he saw someone calling out to him. Ling Han glanced over. This was only a ninth heaven celestial king. He couldn't help but show a hint of displeasure. What was wrong with this world? Did ninth heaven celestial kings not know that they should respect heavenly venerates? My young master would like to see you, this celestial king said. I refuse, Ling Han directly rejected. Ling Han, don't be an ungrateful wretch. My young master, Yue Chengwang, is the only son of a sixth-tier heavenly venerate. This celestial king announced proudly, clearly threatening Ling Han. Ling Han was surprised. This guy actually dared to threaten him? He shook his head. If he wants to meet me, he should come personally. Doesn't he have any legs? Ling Han, don't be an ungrateful wretch, that celestial king shouted loudly, a sneer on his face. Pa! Ling Han delivered a slap from the distance, and that celestial king was instantly sent flying. Ling Han stated evenly, if you continue blustering, I will take your life. That celestial king held a hand to his face and finally did not dare to speak any further. He hurriedly turned and left. Ling Han did not take it to heart. Counter pawns with the king and water with an earth weir. Who would he fear? After meeting with the empress and the others, they went to another raw stone lane. It was not big, but the size of the raw stone lane did not determine whether there would be treasure or not. Ling Han discovered 2 great herbs there, which he was very pleased about. He quietly bought a few raw stones and did not let anyone know just how great his profits were. Very quickly, he went to a small shop. Half a day later, he left, a smile on his face. Unfortunately, though he had obtained quite a few great herbs, he did not find even a single heavenly venerable seal, which left him slightly disappointed. After visiting 3 small shops in a row, Ling Han decided to take a look at a bigger raw stone lane. This time, neither the Empress nor Hunyou wanted to follow him and waste their time. To spend the whole day looking at stones was really too boring. Hence, Ling Han entered into the raw stone lane in the company of Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing. Chapter 2859, 2859 The Tyrannical Yue Chengwang. Chapter 2859, 2859 The Tyrannical Yue Chengwang. 2859 The Tyrannical Yue Chengwang. Ling Han began to profit quietly, but the luck of his first time was really too good. Now, though, he could not find a third heavenly venerable seal no matter what he tried. At most, he only found great herbs, and this was very understandable. There was naturally no shortage of celestial medicines in a dimension, as long as there was enough time, and the conditions for its growth were there. They could all become supremely valuable medicines. That stuff was still good. It could advance cultivation level and was greatly beneficial as well. Ling Han needed a frightening amount of energy to take a single step forward. Hence, not only did he need a great number of heavenly venerable seals, he also needed as many supremely valuable medicines as possible to push his cultivation level forwards. However, he could not completely concentrate, because he was already very famous after his 3 rounds of stone gambling. Grandmaster Ling, can you help me to take a look at this raw stone? Brother Ling, won't you join me for a drink later? There would always be people trying to strike up a conversation with him. Some were very reserved, saying that they wanted to befriend him, but there were some that were extremely frank, directly asking him to help look at the raw stones. For those who were polite, Ling Han would politely refuse. He did not have that much time, and for those who had a lofty opinion of themselves, Ling Han ignored them completely. It dawned on him. That person who had demanded him to meet with the so-called young master probably had the motive of asking for his help in stone gambling. Heh, what a joke. How truly arrogant. Isn't he just good at stone gambling? Someone grumbled lowly at the sidelines. Sure, Could it be that you don't know that aside from being a Grandmaster of raw stone, this guy is a supreme genius? It is said that he can match a fourth tier. Are you tired of living? Someone beside him warned quickly. Ling Han was not some other Grandmaster of raw stone. He himself had battle prowess that was terrifying. Isn't that Yue Chengwang? Someone suddenly looked towards the entrance. Tisk, TSK, TSK. The young master of the Yue clan. He is an extremely overbearing guy. I heard someone had unearthed a great herb not too long ago, and he forcefully snatched it without paying. Who said that it had been without paying? Hadn't he paid a piece of divine metal? Heh, his manners are really too bad. It can't be helped. Who asked a sixth-tier heavenly venerate to father him? He's probably here to play the same trick of gaining without risking anything of his again, isn't he? Who knows who's the one to catch his eye now? Everyone was whispering, but anyone who was a heavenly venerate could easily hear them. Naturally, these words were heard by that young master of the Yue clan as well. Yet Yue Chengwang showed a hint of pride. He did not fear others talking about him behind his back. This was only proof of how strong he was. Young Master Yue, that's him. Beside him, a man pointed at Ling Han. It was the Celestial King that had stood in Ling Han's path at the city entrance, demanding him to meet with Yue Chengwang. To dare not give even me face, he is too brazen, isn't he? Yue Chengwang asked coldly. Since childhood, his words were like an imperial decree that no one dared to disobey. I shall see just how capable he is. He just stared at Ling Han from a distance. But what disappointed him was that Ling Han merely chose stones, but did not open them. After paying their price in divine metal, he would throw these pieces of raw stones into his spatial tool. A day later, Ling Han was satisfied. He had still raked in a good catch this time, and the only disappointment was that he still lacked a heavenly venerable seal. He planned to take a rest and then move again. Wait. Yue Chengwang had long since been waiting for him. Seeing that Ling Han was about to leave, he immediately raised an arm to block him. Ling Han looked towards him and frowned slightly. It is said that a good dog does not block the way. Looks like you are a vicious dog. Master, don't keep talking about dogs, Fu Tianqing hurriedly warned from the side. The large black dog might become rabid. Yue Chengwang grimaced slightly. You guys are really looking down on me, aren't you? He humphed. Ling Han, hand over the raw stones that you have just chosen. I will not let you suffer losses. I will buy them from you for double the original price. This was practically robbery. Hiring a Grandmaster of raw stone would cost no small amount, but he actually wanted to buy the raw stones from him for double their cost. This was really black-hearted beyond words. Ling Han had never seen someone as shameless as this. Ling Han grinned in spite of himself. If you want raw stones, there are more than enough here. Furthermore, what reason is there for me to sell them to you? Simply because I am Yue Chengwang, Yue Chengwang declared proudly. You are putting on such great airs, aren't you? I invited you once, but that actually did not move you. You are really the first. Ling Han shook his head. I don't have the time to waste with an idiot like you. Get lost. Looks like you are really ungrateful, Yue Chengwang said coldly, yet stepped aside. He did not dare to make a move here. The consequences were something that not even he could bear. Moreover, though he was a third tier, he knew that there was no way he could match Ling Han. He would have to ask the elites in their alliance to interfere to suppress Ling Han. When Ling Han passed him by, he said, Don't think that I will let the matter go just like this. It won't be too long, and you will beg to meet me, kneeling to ask for forgiveness from me. Ling Han turned to glance at him and threw down a few words before leaving. Idiot. What? Yue Chengwang did not even dare to believe his ears. A great heavenly venerate would actually be so rude and actually throw insults? His expression was filled with malice. He swore that he would definitely make Ling Han regret this. Ling Han strode off. He had already foreseen this. As his strength in stone gambling was revealed, it would attract the eyes of many. Their motive was naturally wanting him to help them in stone gambling. He returned and unearthed a few great herbs. He handed them to the Empress and the others. Everyone could advance their cultivation level together. Ling Han was sure that there was no one that could suppress him once he advanced to the 4th tier. Unless a 7th tier appeared. Ling Han, the Empress, and the others went into seclusion, digesting the benefits that they had reaped this time. But just when they came out of seclusion, they were greeted with the sight of a heavenly venerate. This man's surname was Ma, but his real name had long since gone out of use. His title was Highest North. Young lad, the Highest North heavenly venerate came straight to the point. By someone's request, I have purposely come to bring you a message. You had best beg for mercy from young Master Yue as soon as possible. If you do, you will still have a sliver of hope. Otherwise, heh. Ling Han looked towards him. A great, dignified 4th tier, and you are actually playing the role of an errand boy for someone else. Don't you think that is demeaning to yourself? I am just fulfilling a request, young lad. If you don't give me face, take care lest I will be forceful towards you. The Highest North heavenly venerate said laughingly, as if he was joking. Ling Han also smiled. Then you should also be careful, sir. If I do make a move, I usually don't leave any survivors. The Highest North heavenly venerate's expression slightly darkened. He had not thought that not only would Ling Han ignore his advice, he would actually dare to turn around and threaten him as well. He laughed again. The young are really overtaking the old now. The youth of today really are very courageous. Ling Han merely smiled and did not reply. Behave yourself. The Highest North heavenly venerate threw down these words and left. But he had just left when a 4 sides heavenly venerate also came and said more or less the same words to Ling Han. This 4 sides heavenly venerate really had 4 expressions. At times, it would be a grievously weeping face, which would then be filled with anger. At times, his face would be all smiles or overcome with hilarity. Others would really think that he had lost his mind. Ling Han dealt with him similarly, but then came 2 6th tier 1 heavenly venerates, the Gray Space heavenly venerate and Purple Flames heavenly venerate. They all demanded that Ling Han take the initiative to plead mercy from Yue Chengwang, and only then would he have a chance of survival. This was Yue Chengwang's effort to show his strength to Ling Han. Chapter 2860, 2860 Grandmaster Xuanlai. Chapter 2860, 2860 Grandmaster Xuanlai. 2860 Grandmaster Xuanlai. Ling Han naturally ignored them. Yue Chengwang could only seek the help of 4th tier heavenly venerates, but when it came to the 4th tiers, Ling Han indeed wasn't fearful. He went about selecting and opening up the stones with peace of mind, and then used great herbs to improve his cultivation level. In the eyes of everyone, he was both high-profile and low-key. What was considered keeping a high profile? Was it not high profile of him to defeat 2 Grandmasters of Raw Stone and kill a heavenly venerate subsequently? Moreover, every few days, he would scurry around various raw stone lanes in Culmination City and purchase a large quantity of raw stones. But what was low-key was that Ling Han had never publicly opened up stones again, and now some people were even wondering if Ling Han had indeed won against Niu Buchuan and Bao Yufeng by virtue of his abilities, or he had just stumbled upon them by luck. Ling Han paid no heed to what other people thought as he made a fortune secretly. In this Culmination City, he stayed for more than 900 years, and the good things that he got were really amazing. However, some raw stone lanes had grown wary of him, and had put away certain raw stones that they believed to be their most valuable treasures, preventing him from having the chance to choose. Over the years, Ling Han had obtained a total of 71 heavenly venerable seals, which was extremely amazing. Although most of the heavenly venerable seals obtained were 9th grade seals, it allowed him to obtain 3 combination seals of this level, which could increase the battle prowess by 44 times, 29 times, and 13 times, respectively. At first glance, even the improvement by 44 times didn't exceed the 14th seal, but Ling Han wasn't far from completing the whole set of 9th grade seals. Once completed, the 111 heavenly venerable seals could all be combined in a series. At that time, it would be amazing indeed. Ling Han estimated that this would probably increase his battle prowess by more than 100 times, and could even surpass a first-grade heavenly venerable seal. On the other hand, he was furiously consuming great herbs, and his cultivation level was also improving rapidly, gradually approaching the middle stage of the second tier. Only the middle stage of the second tier? Had all these great herbs been given to the Empress or Hunyao, they would at least have been able to advance to another level, stepping into either the third tier or fourth tier. But when it came to Ling Han, it couldn't be helped. The number of dimensions in his body was limitless, causing him to need an excessive amount of energy for every step forward in advancing to the next level. This was the path he had chosen, and he had already foreseen this day before he started taking this route. Hence, although he was a little jealous of the advancement of the Empress and Hunyao, he did not act too hastily. His strength was steadily rising, and the solidity of his foundation caused people to exclaim it was inconceivable. However, the peaceful days had finally been interrupted. A letter of challenge was sent to Ling Han. The challenger was Grandmaster Xuanlai, an extremely famous Grandmaster of raw stone. The letter of challenge stated quite politely an intention to compete with Ling Han. There was no anger, appearing calm and serene instead. However, this person was the master of Nyobuchuan and Bao Fengyu. He intentionally came here to issue a challenge, so how could it just be a simple spar with Ling Han? Naturally, Ling Han wasn't afraid of competing. When it came to stone gambling, he did not fear even an elite of 7th tier. Let's compete then. He responded and accepted the challenge from Grandmaster Xuanlai. When the news came out, the entire culmination city was shaken. Grandmaster Xuanlai was one of the first Grandmasters of raw stones. He seemed to have a natural sensitivity to raw stones, and the success rate of stone gambling was astonishingly high. It was precisely due to this that it was impossible for a character like him to stone gamble in Culmination City. Wouldn't that cause everything to be chaotic? This kind of Grandmaster of raw stone would be working with various major forces, and his main task was to help these forces control the raw stones that they mined. Those truly valuable items would be retained by them. It was impossible for them to be allowed to flow into the market. Of course, they were truly gambling with raw stones, unlike Ling Han, who could directly see through the raw stones, so it was inevitable that there would be things that might have slipped through the cracks. However, Ling Han had been cutting open raw stones in such a way, and almost all the heavenly venerable seals obtained over the past 900 years were of the 9th grade, which was enough to clear some doubts. The oldest batch of Grandmasters of raw stones really did have actual caliber and genuine knowledge. Now, such a Grandmaster of raw stone was about to stone gamble with Ling Han, which naturally caused a big commotion. How many years had it been that people hadn't seen a real Grandmaster make a move? The competition venue is Severvoid Lane. That's the largest raw stone lane in Culmination City, jointly operated by 7 major forces. In the past, this was where the orange-colored great herb was unearthed. Unfortunately, the most valuable treasures aren't put up for sale at all, or I would have procured them a long time ago. You can just keep on boasting. The raw stones in the treasured area can only be purchased with a heavenly venerable seal or at least a yellow-colored great herb. With your little wealth, you still want to procure those treasures? Sigh. Entry to the treasure area is strictly forbidden, so what's the use of having money? Hee. I've heard that in order to facilitate the competition between the 2 Grandmasters, Severvoid Lane may open up the treasure area for the 2 Grandmasters to select raw stones, and even the treasures of the store can also be selected. What? Then I must go take a look. I have always wanted to know what kind of good items can be obtained from those few treasures of the store. Amidst all the discussions, Ling Han came to Severvoid Lane. He stopped at the door, feeling quite rueful. That was because he had wanted to come here before, but he hadn't expected to be rejected. He also didn't know if it had been because Severvoid Lane had been afraid of his strength and had gone so far as to especially close the shop. If he had been the only one to be kicked out, then Ling Han would definitely have lost his temper. No one would do business like this. However, the other party was too much of a ruffian. They simply closed the shop to rest and kicked everyone out, so Ling Han couldn't lose his temper even if he felt indignant. Oh, so we are not allowed to rest, is it? Now, the door here was finally open to him. Even after the stone gambling ended today, he also wouldn't leave so he could wipe out their goods. As soon as he entered the door, he saw an apprentice waiting inside. When he saw Ling Han, he immediately bowed and saluted. "Grandmaster Ling, please follow me." That was still considered polite. Ling Han nodded and followed the other party. This time, the Empress and Hu Niu still didn't come. Their personalities weren't suited for such an occasion at all. In the eyes of others, opening up a stone was a very exciting thing. But for the two women, it was merely a senseless waiting game, extremely boring. Therefore, Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing accompanied him this time. The three of them followed the apprentice and soon came to a gazebo, where they saw an old man sitting upright and two people standing behind him. Who else could it be but Niu Buchuan and Bao Fengyu? Needless to say, this old man had to be Grandmaster Xuanlai. Grandmaster Ling agreed to compete with this old man. "I am really flattered." Grandmaster Xuanlai was very polite, far from being as arrogant as Niu Buchuan and Bao Fengyu. Obviously, he wasn't dazzled by the current glory and knew that this world belonged to the strong after all, and in front of the supreme heavenly venerates, whatever celestial king or grandmaster of raw stones were nothing but trash. Now that he had shown the right attitude, the heavenly venerates would also remember his virtues, and perhaps might even let him keep his outstanding status. This was indeed what was called being seasoned and smooth. Ling Han chuckled. "I've known about Grandmaster Xuanlai's reputation for a long time. Meeting with you today, you are indeed as extraordinary as your reputation." It wasn't that he deliberately flattered the other party. The Grandmasters of raw stones who had risen at the beginning were indeed very good. He had heard of many cases. "Hee, you're too kind with your words." Grandmaster Xuanlai laughed. "This time, I invited Grandmaster Ling for stone gambling simply to compete in skills. There is no other meaning." Chapter 2861, 2861 2 wins in 3 rounds. Chapter 2861, 2861 2 wins in 3 rounds. 2861 2 wins in 3 rounds. Huh. Ling Han was a little surprised. Did this old man really just want to compete with him in skills? Grandmaster Xuanlai turned his head and shouted to Bao Fengyu and Niu Buchuan behind him, quickly apologized to Grandmaster Ling now. Although the duo of Bao and Niu were not very willing, they had no choice but to bow their heads. They knelt down and said, "We have previously offended Grandmaster Ling. We hope that Grandmaster Ling will be generous and forgive us this once." The two of them spoke in such an orderly manner that it was obvious that they had discussed it a long time ago, and it was definitely not a sudden decision made by Grandmaster Xuanlai. Ling Han suddenly came to his senses. Just earlier, he had said that Grandmaster Xuanlai was an enlightened character. This was precisely the wisdom of the other party. Even if he were to win against Ling Han, it wouldn't matter, as he wasn't able to kill Ling Han. One day, Grandmasters of raw stones would retire from the stage of history, and if Ling Han was to settle accounts at that time, then who would protect them in the future? Therefore, it would be better to take this opportunity to resolve any grievances. Offend a heavenly venerate? Wouldn't that be suicidal? Ling Han nodded. Since Grandmaster Xuanlai saw it so clearly and gave him enough face, he would let the duo of Niu and Bao go, as long as these two refrained from any evil schemes in the future. "Okay, I'll let it pass." Ling Han waved his hand. Both Bao and Niu were upset. In fact, Ling Han didn't suffer anything at all, so why were they required to bow their heads? But since their master had asked, how could they have the right to refuse? "Grandmaster Xuanlai, how are we going to compete?" Ling Han asked. He completely didn't pay any heed to the duo of Niu and Bao. Since Grandmaster Xuanlai was the one to issue a challenge, he had naturally thought about it long ago. Therefore, after hearing such words, he smiled and said, "Then we will use 3 raw stones to determine the outcome." Agreed. Ling Han nodded. However, we won't be using the total value of the 3 raw stones to determine the outcome, but rather each raw stone will be counted as a single round. The victor will be the one who wins 2 out of 3 rounds. How about it? That's fine. In the first round, the selection of raw stones is limited to 2 hours, while in the second round, it is limited to 6 hours, and finally in the third round, it is limited to 1 day. Ling Han couldn't help but cast another glance at Grandmaster Xuanlai. This old man was skilled indeed. In 2 hours, the number of raw stones that Ling Han could explore was quite limited, and it was impossible to even know what was in the raw stones selected by Grandmaster Xuanlai, which made the game really suspenseful. Not only true ability was needed, but the result also depended on luck. Ling Han nodded. That's fine. He also found it boring to always win without a doubt. Does Grandmaster Ling need to take a break, or should we start immediately? Grandmaster Xuanlai asked with a smile. No need to waste time, let's start, Ling Han said casually. Agreed. Master Xuanlai invited the shopkeeper of Sever Void Lane over to act as the umpire of the competition. All around, there were countless people watching. This kind of stone gambling is quite novel. I have never seen it before. It's fair. Yes. No. Don't you think that Grandmaster Xuanlai might have come here a long time ago, and perhaps had already explored all the raw stones here? If time is limited, it will be too unfavorable to Ling Han. Well, that's true also. Grandmaster Xuanlai also listened to everyone's words, and he smiled. Since this old man have put forward so many restrictions, Grandmaster Ling can also make demands on this old man. Here, divide this place into 10 areas. Grandmaster Ling can limit the area where this old man chooses the raw stones, while Grandmaster Ling can choose any area at will. As soon as these words came out, everyone around had nothing further to say. There was no absolute fairness in this world. Grandmaster Xuanlai has acted in a very transparent and righteous manner. Ling Han smiled and said, Okay, let's do it like this. He randomly pointed to an area, which would be Grandmaster Xuanlai's area, while he chose the adjacent area. Are you both ready? The shopkeeper of Sever Void Lane was a one-eyed man of broad build, a 4th tier, heavenly venerate named Fiery Silk. As a dignified 4th tier, couldn't he regrow his one eye? He obviously could, but didn't. There was a deep scar on his left eye, which was obviously intentional. Perhaps it was to remind himself whom he had lost it to back then, and if this shame could not be erased, then he would not heal the wound and regain sight in his left eye. Both Ling Han and Master Xuanlai nodded. The Fiery Silk heavenly venerate through an hourglass, which floated in the sky, and sand began dripping. For the first round, it was only 2 hours. Ling Han didn't dare to waste time, and immediately started to move around. His current stone gambling ability has been greatly improved, and he could see the inside as long as he touched the raw stone with his hand. The speed was naturally astonishing, akin to observing the passing lights on a galloping horse, making swift judgment without stopping at all. Grandmaster Xuanlai was the opposite. He would stand still and watch carefully, but once he cast a glance, he would have seen hundreds of raw stones with a single look, and he would leave after careful comparison. He was unexpectedly not much slower than Ling Han. But whether he truly saw through them, or he was just pretending, only he himself would know. Ling Han walked steadily, his face calm, but he was secretly surprised. As expected of the well-known Sever Void Lane indeed. The quality of the raw stones here was quite high. Almost 1 out of every 10 raw stones contained treasure, which was far from what the other raw stone lanes could compare to. But in fact, a large amount of treasure didn't mean that one could make money, because most of them were divine metal, and there was also a small amount of great herbs, but the quantity was extremely low, and Ling Han only saw one green-colored great herb. There wasn't anything else of higher grade than this. Was it because there were powerful characters overseeing this place that this had happened? If it was true, then such a Grandmaster of raw stones ought not to be underestimated. Ling Han's footsteps were getting faster and faster. It was really difficult for him to sweep through this whole area in under 2 hours. After all, Sever Void Lane was jointly run by 6 major forces, so even though the area had been divided into 10 sections, it was still astonishingly massive. Everyone held their breath, and no one made a sound, not daring to disturb the 2 Grandmasters of raw stone, or they would definitely be cast out. Yue Chengwang also came, and he sat down at one side with a haughty expression. He was also very curious about Ling Han's stone gambling ability, but it didn't matter whether Ling Han would win or Lozé would never let Ling Han go. Who was he? The son of a 6th-tier heavenly venerate. There was absolutely no one who could refuse him. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate also rushed over on purpose. There was another 4th tier beside him. He was Long Dao, Long Shiran's father, and kept staring at Ling Han with killing intent in his eyes. Both of them wanted to kill Ling Han, but one coveted the heavenly venerable seals in Ling Han's possession, while the other wanted to avenge the murder of his son. The sand in the hourglass was getting less and less as the 2 hours was about to pass. "Stop!" the fiery silk heavenly venerate declared softly when all the sand had already emptied. Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai stopped in their tracks at the same time and returned to their original places. "Both of you, make your choice," fiery silk heavenly venerate said. Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai nodded at the same time, stretched out their hands, and a raw stone flew over and fell into their hands respectively. "Are you two going to cut open the stone yourselves, or let the stone cutters in this lane open up the stone for you?" the fiery silk heavenly venerate inquired. "This old man will do it himself," Grandmaster Xuanlai said. "I'll open it by myself too." "Understood." Fiery silk heavenly venerate nodded. Both Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai stepped forward to personally open up their raw stones. Immediately, everyone involuntarily took a few steps forward and began chatting excitedly. Now that the process of stone selection was over, they naturally were not afraid of disturbing these two people. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.